Hey, welcome to All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop talk show. So we love having you on. Although this is the third Friday, we are honored and pleasure to have the disciples on in their own program. We have Minister Haqq Muhammad, we have Pastor Bryant Ali and Pastor Nahud Ali, and we will have Councilwoman Louise Scott-Rountree on. They will have guests on tonight. They have a very good show on for tonight that Pastor Ali and Pastor Haqq Muhammad will talk about after they leave at 7:15. We're going to have Professor Forrest Pritchett of Seton Hall University, who's the interim director of the Africana Studies Department, talk about the recent protest and the results of the recent protest at Seton Hall University and a lot of the things that happened behind that. That's a really interesting story. They had quite a few people involved, including Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake, who became involved within that as well. So that's going to be a fun conversation to have. And at 8 o'clock, DJ Rhino and Hakim Green are going to be talking about DJ Rhino, the state of hip hop, but specifically talking about Malcolm X and hip hop. And because today is May 19th, it's Malcolm X's birthday. So we're going to be talking about Malcolm X and hip hop. And we're going to be talking about the Dear Mama documentary about Tupac Shakur, which is an excellent documentary if you have not seen it. So it is the 6 o'clock hour. We have the disciples on. They're going to be spreading some wisdom and talking about a lot of things that are going on within the community and always having good ideas. So the show is yours right now. So take it away.
Thank you, Brother John. Again, we are deeply grateful and highly honored for the privilege and the pleasure to be before you here, the Disciples Show. Once again, my name is Brother Abdul Haqq Muhammad. I'm the student minister of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the Muhammad Mosque of Islam, number 25, which is located here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And again, we come to you all bringing you greetings of peace and love. Again, I have with me my esteemed colleague. I need not to introduce him. He's a great brother here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. He's known affectionately as the pastor in the hood. My brother, your brother, Pastor Ali. But everybody knows you, but go ahead there, brother.
Well, grace and peace be unto you. Good evening to everyone from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. What a privilege it is, what an honor it is to be on All Politics and Local on a third Friday night. And so it's a good, different slot. We're not used to being here. We usually
That's right.
a month, but when you work with our brothers and great colleagues, and when you're asked to switch, especially by the mayor, to do a switch because of scheduling, then that's an honor that he would even consider us to do the switch with. He could have brought somebody else on in his space. So we are honored that Mayor Rajay Baraka gave up his slot and allowed us to come on and switch with him. And he will be on next week. But it's good to be on. It's good to be alive. And we just celebrate life. I'm just glad to be alive and kicking. I don't know about you, but it's good to have life. And I believe that I'm having life more abundantly. And when you get a certain age, you learn to appreciate every day. No matter what your age is, you should appreciate every day. But I like to say this is the day that the Lord has made, and I've made a choice to rejoice and be glad in it. From the pastor of the New Summers Worship Center located here in the city of Newark, and it's good to be here. Peace.
Always good to see you, my dear brother, you and your family. I see our wonderful sister has just arrived. Again, she needs no introduction, but at this time, I'll let her again introduce herself.
Good evening, good evening, good evening to my disciples, my brothers in the movement, ministry movement. Good evening, good evening. Listen, I'm Reverend Louise Scott-Rountree, just your humble, they call me the Revolutionary Reverend, but I'm just your humble servant to the people, of course, from the Good Neighbor Baptist Church, of course, from the city of Newark, council member at large. Just excited to be here. Looking forward to an awesome show tonight. There was a couple of things going on right now while we're doing this and changing our meeting. I'm supposed to be at a bike ride, take off. I know you guys know about the bikes leaving from the police precinct. There's so much going on, but before we get started, Minister Haqq Muhammad, A. Curtis Farrow called me and said to tell you, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for your presentation at Gospel Fest.
Wow.
He said, send you a big virtual hug to thank you for all. He said he's been getting nothing but texts about being inclusive and allowing you. So that was new. That's the first time in the history of Gospel Fest.
Wow.
That what you did in 40 years, and it's his 25th year. That's why I text you and said, look, he thought I told you to leave. I was like, no. I was like, I don't know where you at. Get back in. And so, yeah, he said to please thank you and looking forward to doing greater things with you. He says, we got to get him. He wants to be, I want him in more stuff with the Christians. I said, he already is. Has been. I said, you just invited him.
That's right.
He's already been doing this.
Yeah,
as soon as I met him in 2014, April. I'll never forget the date. April of 2014. And he came on, Brother Ed, the steps of City Hall and woke us all up with a statement called Bourgeoisie Negroes. He was like, oh!
Wow, yes, ma'am. Please,
thank you all once again.
I was going to say, that's one thing, Minister Muhammad, that's one thing I've always liked about you and always been impressed by. You go into, like, Christians love you, right? Like Christian ministers, right? Like Christian folks. Like,
they supposed to, though.
That's right.
We're going to talk about the teachings of someone who said love one another and you don't love them.
Right.
That's contradictory hypocrisy.
Well, I mean, but people live in that hypocrisy all the time. I'm just saying it takes some skill, right? It takes some skill for a minister from the Nation of Islam to consistently be invited in. Welcome to.
It takes some skills for someone to keep inviting them too.
Yes,
that's right. That's right. And Reverend Roundtree, we thank you.
I love you.
We really thank you, dear sister. And we know that genetically, what you do has been inherited because, again, your mother was one of the first and only woman here in the city of Newark, New Jersey, a woman of esteem, a woman of great character, a woman of great influence, a very affluent woman, very progressive. And she was one of the first to open her doors to the early followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When it was not popular, when Islam was not popular, your mother was one of the first to open the doors and allow us to have a meeting, to have study group and facilitate our meetings when others were closing the doors. So what you're doing, it was inherited, and you are doing a great and an excellent job, of following the teachings, the true teachings of Jesus Christ. So we really thank you, Reverend Roundtree, and we appreciate you and we love you, my dear sister. And please send my love and greetings to Brother Farrow on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and Muhammad's Mosque number 25 for granting us the opportunity to be there and do that. So we are greatly appreciative of that, and we thank you. But tonight we have an action-packed show. But before we get into it, as it relates to our guests, our esteemed guests, we was just informed that we suffered a tragic and devastating loss of our brother, our friend, activist of social justice. He was more than just an athlete. We know of Jim Brown's history and how vocal he was as it relates to the struggle of Black people in America. We know that he was one of the only few athletes at that time to stand and back Muhammad Ali when he would not go to war. Jim Brown was an advocate of peace. We know he started the American Hakim program. He was very pivotal, very instrumental in the gang truce that happened in Los Angeles. Our brother did so much for our community and our people, more so than just entertaining or running a football. We know that he retired, at the height of his career, great actor, very multi-talented brother, and we lost him. So if Reverend Roundtree and Pastor Ali, you don't mind, maybe we can just, lift a prayer for his family, and all of his well wishes and those who loved him, again, before we get into our program.
Well, let us pray. Father, we give you honor, we give you praise, and we pray for the family of Jim Brown. We pray for his wife. We pray for all those that are connected to him. And most of all, God, we thank you for the legacy that he has left behind that will live on for generations to come. Continue to comfort, continue to build, and make somebody else, other people pick up the ball where he left the ball, waiting for somebody else to pick it up. We thank you for the life that you gave him. We were promised 70 and 10, and if I strayed 4, and you gave him 87 years. So we're grateful that he had overtime in life. So we pray that you will keep his wife and keep his family. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Ali. So again, speaking of this wonderful and awesome show that we have here tonight, we have 2 very powerful guests with us tonight. One, Reverend Rountree, you know very, 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 very well. I know him very, very well. Pastor Ali, you know him very, very well. He's a son of Newark, New Jersey. He's a brother. He's a friend. I mean, he's really a history maker. He goes by the name of Dupree Kelly. Do y'all know that, brother?
Do it all.
Do it all. Dupree Kelly. You know, our brother has made history. We know many of our people know him for being part of the historic group, Lords of the Underground, the multi-platinum group. I just like to read some things about our dear brother. On June 14, 2022, the Honorable Dupree L. Kelly became the first platinum-selling hip-hop artist in the United States of America to win elected office. As Westward councilman, he is governing where he grew. As an adolescent, he attended 13th Avenue Elementary School and continued to North Tech Essex County Vocational and Technical School. Not only did he play basketball, but he was also a co-captain of the baseball team. Raised by a single mother, Dupree wrote songs at his home in the West Ward that will go on to sell millions of records with his group, Lords of the Underground, and impacted millions of people around the world. Dupree attended Shaw University at HBCU, located in Raleigh, North Carolina, where he also pledged Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Being a member of Alpha Phi Alpha is where he gained his love for community. Upon his return to Newark, New Jersey, Dupree started a non-for-profit organization called 211 Community Impact, where the mission is to stimulate interest in community issues and foster action for change by providing innovative community educational programs, public policy information, and resources. And all of us who know Brother Dupree, we know that he's always been very active in Newark, New Jersey. Even before he became a councilman, we know our brother was always walking the streets, always using his voice to, advocate change, striving to improve the quality of life for brothers and sisters in the city where he grew up. So he didn't just become a councilman, then start advocating community, then start advocating change. We knew our brother was already on the battlefield before he became the Westward councilman, which I believe would help catapult him to victory in the West Ward. Brother is very innovative. Again, he's had fresh ideas. We really appreciate our brother and we love him. And he will be here with us today as we talk about Black Health Matters. We also have another very powerful sister. You know, Reverend Rountree, we have a lot of powerful women on this program. We had one last month. Our sister, what was our sister name again? Reverend Rountree from University Hospital.
Brooke Tippins.
That's right. We had her here last month. And again, very dynamic sister, well-rounded, very community-orientated. So we really appreciated her. She spoke truth to power. She was very honest and very transparent. But we coming back again, Reverend Rountree. And again, we thank you for being here and for helping us to facilitate this.
Yes.
So again, we have another powerful sister, Rosalind Daniels, who will be with us today. I don't know if everybody in the listening audience have heard of this sister, but if you haven't, you need to know this sister. She's dynamic, she's powerful, she's groundbreaking. Rosalind Young Daniels is president and founder of Black Health Matters. We got to say that again. She's president and founder of Black Health Matters, and we know that Black Health Matters.
Yes.
The leading health promotion and disease management online platform serving the needs of consumers, patients, and physicians. She is a tireless advocate for eliminating health disparities, and we need these health disparities eliminated, and we have a lot of them, by improving the health literacy of African American consumers and patients. A former senior executive in broadcast and publishing, Daniel is a nationally respected health strategist with more than 20 years designing and implementing cross-cultural health education programs and initiatives. Now, that's just the first half of this sister's bio, but I hope that you understand the type of weight that this sister carries with her. And we're celebrating her. Why? Because we love Black women here at the Disciples. That's right. We love Black women, Reverend Rountree, and you can attest to that. Daniel is disrupting the educational space for African American patients. You heard that, Pastor Ali?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
She's a disruptor, and that's what we need. We need
that's what we need.
Disrupt, right?
Disruptor.
Educational spaces for African American patients. In 2018, she launched the Black Health Matters Summit, which is a multi-platform initiative that features live TED Talks, inspired presentations by leading clinicians and health advocates. The Black Health Matters Summit draws thousands of impressions via original content produced, which includes videos pushed through social media and custom newsletters to its base of subscribers and fans. Black Health Matters has worked with AbbVie, Bristol Myers, Boston Scientific, Gilead, Bristol Myers, I don't know how to say that, Squib, Sanofi, I hope I said that right, and other leading pharmaceutical companies. I don't know these pharmaceutical companies' names. Pardon me, Sister Rosalind Young Daniels. Understanding that African American men have the lowest life expectancy and the highest death rate compared to men and women in other racial ethnic groups. We got to say that again. She understands that African American men have the lowest life expectancy and highest death rates compared to men and women in other racial ethnic groups in the United States. Now, we know that's not an accident, right? Reverend Rountree, Pastor Ali, Brother Ed, that's not an accident. Daniel launched Precision Oncology in partnership with Kappa Alpha Phi Fraternity, Inc. The goal is to offer strategies needed to establish and strengthen the capacity of Kappa Alpha Phi chapters in promoting health and wellness among members in the greater community in which they live and work. Black Health Matters will host more than 5 precision oncology programs in 2020 at Kappa Province meetings with the goal of touching more than 60,000 Kappas within the program year. Outside of business, Daniels is Vice Chair of Health and Human Services. So we see that Health and Human Services is her passion. For the Bergen County, New Jersey chapter of the Links Incorporated, where she manages key initiatives including feeding the homeless and community health programs. Our sister is a community advocate. She is also a member of the health ministry at Abyssinian Baptist Church and member of Women of Color in Pharma. An ovarian cancer survivor. All praise be to Allah and God. She often speaks to the importance of self-care and of being a knowledgeable patient. Professionally, she mentors women entrepreneurs on revenue, acquisition, and management. Daniels is a graduate of Boston University. Our sister, I see our sister, beautiful smiling face, Rosalind Young Daniels. Forgive me if I chopped up some of them words. Sister, I did not get that fine Boston education, my dear sister, that you got. I'm just your brother and servant, but we're so happy to have you. We're so happy to see your smiling face. I hope that you are pleased with the spirit upon which we introduced you, dear sister, but we are really appreciative of you and what you have done and what God will bless you to continue to do. You are a strong, impactful, powerful Black woman. And we know that God has blessed you with the spirit of revolution. I see our other brother, Revolution.
Councilman Dupree Kelly is also
hip-hop, multi-platinum artist, Lords of the Underground. But now he came overground, Reverend Rountree.
Yes, he did.
Serving the community, our brother, our friend, our community activist, a uncle, a father, a pastor. He's all of that. You got to be all of that when you in the hood, right?
Yeah, you got to
really
be all
love
things
our
to all
brothers.
people.
Yeah, you got to be all of that. So we see our brothers with us. We read your bio, Brother Dupree. Again, very impressive. And we pray that just our listeners will be inspired by your bio. You as well, Sister Rosalind. Your bios were very inspiring. You don't have to say a word.
Well, your work speaks for you. It ain't even the bio.
That's right.
It's the body of the work. Because words are just words. People can put some words on paper, but it's the work you're doing that he just translated to the people. Because that bio consists of work. You didn't get all of that done just by talking about it. You became a disruptor about being about it.
That's right. And
good trouble.
Thank
you.
Good trouble.
And the spaces that she is being a disruptor in. Those are very, very difficult and challenging spaces.
Absolutely.
Where we know that people of color, a lot of times, or our people, typically are not dominant. So we know that our sister has to have the spirit of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and even Denmark Vesey, and she has to have that revolutionary spirit of Queen Mother Moore and all of the great sisters that preceded her. So, and us. So again, we're so thankful that you are with us. Brother Dupree, Sister Rosalind, if you would just like to say a few words before we get into the discussion at hand.
Well, I'm so humbled to be amongst this esteemed company. Thank you for those words. I'm just humbled, and I enjoy the work, and I'm so happy to be here.
So happy to have you, my dear sister.
And I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you. For you guys to collaborate is amazing to me. To have, Pastor in the Hood, Roundtree and you, brother Abdul, man, Haqq, man. It's just amazing just to have you guys interacting with each other, because it says a lot. It says how diverse our community is, but still needs assistance and help and people to talk to them and help them heal. No matter the religion, when people under certain religions can come together, no matter their difference of how they praise God, but they can come together for God, for the people, in God's name. That's amazing to me, and that's where healing starts with a lot of people, man. And I'm just excited to be on this call and talk about Black Health Matters and to have Miss Rosalind on the call. And if people remember when I wrote when I was campaigning, I did my West Ward revitalization plan, and in that plan I talked about having a dock on the block. And the dock on the block was supposed to be when we pull up in a Winnebago or, some type of trailer, so that we pull up to certain neighborhoods and people can come get screened right there. They don't have to always catch public transportation, especially in the West, going down our main vein, the 31, which always has issues for some of our residents, or catching the bus down to the university hospital or trying to catch a bus cross town to Beth Israel. It's difficult a lot. So I wanted to pull up in the community, and partnering with BHM has done more than that. It's my program on steroids, because it brings some of the top surgeons and physicians and all of those people to our neighborhood, but for our youth, for our Black and brown men, for our seniors, our elders, and bring some of those professional doctors and people who look like us, that care about us and understand what it takes to heal us, because we don't like to go to the doctor a lot of times, and for various reasons, right? Sometimes we feel like we can't afford it, we don't have the insurance, so this kind of just alleviate all of the excuses, so we're going to put doctors, right, professional doctors, right in our community, right in our neighborhood. We're going to bust them there, and instead of just having it feel like it's some type of you're going to a boring doctor visit, we're going to have entertainment, we're going to have food, jazz bands, and it's going to be private too, where you can feel like you can have private conversations with these great physicians and therapists And one thing I love about it is that we're going to be talking about mental health, you know. And Haqq, I spoke to you about really talking to our residents about how to eat to live instead of living to eat, you know, which is important in our community. So this is something that I'm very, very excited about.
Man, thank you so much, Brother Dupree, and we can feel your passion and your spirit, and we're appreciative of it, and we know that brothers and sisters in our community would definitely be the beneficiaries of your spirit. Sister Rosalind?
I mean, again, we are just amazed at how, not amazed, but this is a very unique partnership that Councilman Dupree Kelly, the city of Newark, Black Health Matters, and more than 20 community partners are coming together, like you said, brother, to radicalize us about health. Because if we don't take it seriously, why should anyone else?
That's right.
So we get it. Black folks have been disenfranchised from the medical system. That is not our fault. Racism is one of the number one predictors in this country as to how long you will live and your zip code. So, and that was established many, many years ago. Let's think about it. We were enslaved in this country so that the slaveholders or the people who enslaved us could sleep at night. They had to believe that we were different. And they taught that in our medical schools. And so the vestiges of that content lives today. Have you ever heard someone say, well, Black people don't really feel pain the same way that white people do?
That's right.
That is left over from slavery. There are just so many vestiges of that. So in order for us to claim our health, we've got to come strong. And
that's right.
Health in this day and age, with everything that's going on, we saw that what happened during COVID. It is an act of resilience. You're stepping up to say, I don't care what society has in store for me. I want to be healthy. And let me just say one other thing. Race is key, and no one is exempt. Don't think that if someone else lives in another community, they're exempt. Black doctors in this country die 5 years. They don't live as long as their white physician counterpart. They live about 5 years less. So even MDs are not immune from what happens. So we have to be together. We have to build a culture of health. And that's what the Black Health Matters Summits are about. It's about helping to empower our people, helping them to have fun, helping them to connect with like-minded folks, have consultations with physicians. As Councilman Kelly said, we're bringing the best and the brightest in medicine right into the community so that people can access it. And access is so very important, and they can get their health journey on. They will be everyone who comes to our summits is inspired. And that's what we're seeking to do, is to inspire everyone looking to get on that road to better health.
Wow, thank you so much, Sister Rosalind. Reverend Rountree, do you have any questions for Sister Rosalind?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to make, first I want to thank you. Oh, am I on mute? No. Thank you for joining the disciples tonight, with the schedule being what it is. Tomorrow's a very important day in the city of Newark with this summit. And as difficult as it is for the African-American men and even women today to be concerned about their health. I mean, those who have insurance, someone said to me the other week, they were like, I got insurance. I go every chance I get, because you never know when something's going to creep up. But if you know you're not eating right already, if you know you're not getting the proper rest already, the chances are some things might be already going wrong. We don't claim these things, but I am really excited about this summit because, as you said, it never comes without inspiration. So we have to encourage. This is one day that we're going to make a difference here in the city of Newark with the summit regarding our health. But then we got to keep the conversation going.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
once the summit comes and everybody's hyped, and prayerfully, we can keep the Councilman Kelly and Sister Rosalind Young Daniels. I'm excited when a sister is doing it, because we know that women give birth to nations. We know that prophets couldn't go nowhere unless they had a sister somewhere near.
That's right.
So I just thank God that you have come on here today. I'm thanking God for the summit that's going to take place tomorrow. We're going to encourage. I'm coming through.
Thank you.
And not only am I coming through, we're going to do what we need to do to make sure folks stop by to get inspired. We've been sharing the information every chance Councilman Kelly gets, no matter where we are. We was in the middle of the fashion show yesterday. We were telling the seniors, you need to come. Do you need buses? That was at another meeting. So he's been doing his part. And that's all we all can do is encourage. But the conversation, soon as he said one of the guests that were going to be there, the seniors got excited. That was last week. He was talking all about that. As soon as he mentioned Malik, it was like a rap. They said, oh yeah, that's my husband. I mean, these were the but see, sometimes we think whatever it takes to get him there, just get him there.
By any means necessary.
But today is his birthday too, by the way. Malik, and it's Malcolm X's birthday today.
Wow.
Today. So we have to, by any means necessary, get our people the help they need. So many brothers, my God. You start talking about going for a prostate checkup, they like, oh Lord, until they're diagnosed. And then it becomes, how soon can I get there? Same with sisters.
Right.
So
I got
I'm
diagnosed.
excited about you, sister. I'm excited about the work you're doing. I'm excited that you're going to be in Newark. I'm excited that Councilman Do It All Kelly took on the initiative to partner with you to bring this. I tell people, it don't matter who at the front of the line. If it's a good thing, just get in line.
That's right.
That's right.
And I'm excited about it because, I serve on the board of Mill Community Health Center, and we just had our summit on Wednesday.
Nice.
Downtown at Ruth Ginsburg at Rutgers University. And, we have facilities throughout Newark and also East Orange. And so I'm glad to see more people of color coming on to empower our people outside of the healthcare facility. Since COVID has changed a lot of things. It used to be a time, and still a time among our young people that we think the emergency room is the doctor's office. And don't have no general, no practitioners or no physicians, no MDs in our lives unless we're sick or shot. So I'm glad to see we need more. Every ward, everybody in the community have to get serious about health. I won't always serious about health. I'm an ex-addict, but after I had my heart attack at 50, 14 years ago, and multiple surgeries and at death so many times, I realized what it is to have good health. And I told the Lord, I said, you promised me 3, 4, and 10, which is 7. If by chance I get 4, I'm 64. I say, if all I got left is 6, it's cool, but I'd rather take the 16.
All right. That's what I love. I love that. Once you ruin your health, you really can't buy it back. And we're going to be at the doctor, 2 hours a year? Maybe 3 hours a year. Because, the doctors, when they come in and talk to you, it's so brief. They get you in, they get you out. It's what you do in between that doctor's visit that's going to keep you alive. And we're
Rosin Daniels, 10 hours is no time compared to 365 more days to live if you can just do what you need to do.
Right.
So for this month, the women of the city of Newark, our First Lady, Linda Baraka, Council President LaMonica R. McIver, which is also a part of a team that we've been doing women's meetings. This month, we dedicated it to women's health.
Excellent.
But it's going to be an ongoing conversation. Our First Lady now moderated a panel last Saturday at North Beth Israel Medical Center. They had a summit at the Marriott Hotel from 6 a.m. to 12 noon. Council President Monica McIver did a mammogram event at University Hospital. I chair the University Hospital Community Advisory Council. So we're looking to do more. You know, it wouldn't be a bad thing to spearhead something once a month to keep people going. You know, repetition is the mother of learning.
That's so true.
People got to learn how to do some stuff. Like you tell your children when they're growing up, you can't tell them one time go brush their teeth at 4 years old and they remember the next day and just go do it.
That's true. So let me just say this. Everyone who comes to the summit will receive in their inbox a Black Health Matters newsletter weekly.
Good.
So we're committed
Oh my God.
to keeping that information going. And for our seniors who don't have email, we're happy to text them information on a weekly basis. And again, we're pulling it from Black Health Matters, the largest website out there on Black health in the United States.
Yes.
So we educate on more than 28 chronic conditions on blackhealthmatters.com, in addition to information on nutrition, lifestyle, mental health, you name it, it's on, and relationships, how to have positive relationships. So all of that is there. We'll call that and we send it out weekly. So, and it's all timely. So we're going to keep this community as our community together as we continue to reach out.
How often do you do summits? Do you do them all?
We do them 4 times a year.
4 times a year. And how do you select your locations?
We look at various markets and see where there could possibly be need, and also who is the partner that's going to help energize that whole process. As you can see, thank you so much for everything that you've done to articulate why it's so important to attend. And those are the types of partnerships that really are meaningful for the community. Because I am not a resident of Newark, but when they hear you speak about why they should come, it's going to really mean something. It'll be very meaningful to that listener and that community and that family. So we look for partnerships that reach deep into the community and who collaborate with us. We got a lot of our great ideas from Councilman Dupree Kelly, and as well as some of the other aides and people that we've met along the way. So it's an open collaborative event, and we're excited. So for people, like for example, you mentioned prostate cancer. We will have the only Black urologist in the state of New Jersey at the summit. And it's important because 1 in 8 Black men in this country will have prostate cancer in their lifetime. It might not kill them, but they will get it, and they need to have a plan. So you have a great resource right there. And so he's going to talk about prostate cancer, prostate health. We're going to talk about breast cancer, kidney disease, all the diseases that impact Black and brown communities the most.
And I want to thank you, dear sister. We heard Pastor Ali talk about COVID and how it ravished, America, in general, but the Black community in particular. But one of the things that was discovered as it relates to why COVID has such a devastating effect on our community is because, there were a lot of comorbidities that we as a people had, hypertension, diabetes. Again, our sister said cancer, these epidemics that's, very pronounced in the Black community, very dominant in our community. But, a lot of these illnesses, our sister talked about race, when we look at the history of this country, they are sociogenetic, meaning that the society is the root cause of many of the illnesses that we have, whether it be physiological illnesses, whether it be mental health illnesses, because you can't be under the type of oppression and stress and colonization that we as a people have been under and not suffer some type of physical ailment, psychological ailments. And I think that's why our sister and what she's doing is so important in a time such as this time, where we see many of our, in particular, young Black men dying of heart attacks at 40 years old. We see Jamie Foxx, our brother, still in the hospital, or not in the hospital, he's home now, but again, had a health scare. And that's something that we see all the time in our community. And because of the history of what has happened to us, we do have a phobia as it relates to going to doctors, going to hospitals. But that did not happen in a vacuum. I'm pretty sure that my sister is well versed in this particular book, Medical Apartheid, this revolutionary book by a sister where she pinpoints the history of Black folks and how, you know, the medical establishment in this country has used scientific racism along with other means to kill us, to castigate us, to keep us unhealthy as a people. So many of the phobias and the fears that we have, you know, as a people, we are not delusional. As the social scientists say, we suffer from the delusion of persecution where we are paranoid. But hell, our paranoia is justified because of what has happened to us. And oftentimes when you hear people talk about Black America's fear or their trepidation with going to the doctor, I mean, they say it, but they say it in a way that's trivial. But I would like to just highlight this article that was just released by the Griot. I don't know if you are familiar with this article that was just released, my dear sister. I'm pretty sure you probably are. It came out May 1st, and it says, having Black primary care doctors extends life expectancy for Black patients, study finds. So a study was done, and it was found that when Black people have Black primary care doctors, their life expectancy is extended. So again, this talk and this conversation, these summits, you know, they're very important and they're very pivotal, you know, to our community, which are suffering from so many health challenges.
So well said. That's exactly the reason why we have the Black Health Matters summits. We are modeling behavior for each other. Not somebody from the outside coming in and saying it, people from the community coming out in force and saying it. Yes, the cultural nuances of coming to someone who looks like me is so incredibly powerful and promotes healing. I always tell a story. My mom is a teacher, right? And she goes to the doctor pretty regularly. But if that doctor says, "Hey, Selma, how are you?" She doesn't hear him anymore. But if that doctor knows you address our elders Mr. and Mrs., then she's more receptive.
That's right.
She's gonna listen. So those cute cultural norms have to be taught. And so that's, you know, that's part of what makes, you know, our Black providers so incredibly effective and so special. And we need them. So we need more young people to go into science and medical fields because it's proven it will help our Black community live longer.
Wonderful, my dear sister. Well, let me ask you, what has been some of the barriers that you have had to overcome in providing this service and, you know, being a disruptor in the spaces that you are disrupted in? What have been some of the barriers that you, in particular, being a Black woman, have had to overcome?
That's those, you know, I can't even keep you on this meeting as long. But I think what was pivotal, number one, the best thing was having President Obama come and to start to pass policy for the Affordable Care Act so that screenings were a right. And the fact that you could not be denied insurance no matter what your economic background is. So I always tell the story is that, you know, I'm a sister, I like a few nice things. So I was buying shoes on sale. They didn't fit. But now, you know, but as an older woman, I was starting to have corns and bunions and bunions and corns. And so I had to have, what do you call it, bunionectomy. At the time I was getting married and I was trying to get on my husband's insurance. Do you know I was refused to get on his insurance because I had a bunionectomy. Now, let's think about the Black community. How many people, I mean, the Black community has comorbidities, as you stated. People have diabetes, heart disease, rates of colorectal cancer in their past, all kinds of issues. Before Obamacare, they would have been denied. We would have been denied. We would not have been able to have insurance. At least we can now have insurance. So what Black Health Matters does is say, okay, you've got this access. Let's show you what you can do with it. Let's make it work for you. So that's the great thing. In terms of, there's so many stories that came into play before I, that helped me to launch Black Health Matters. But there was one specifically where I started out in advertising, and I was going to ad agencies saying, hey, I work in Black media. Since Black folks have so many issues in terms of heart disease, stroke, cholesterol, HIV/AIDS, I want you to advertise some of your drugs in my publications. This way, you're exposing Black folks. At least they may see something in a magazine and say, I'm going to take this to my doctor and see what they have to say. And that's really what that's supposed to do. It's supposed to help facilitate a conversation between you and your physician. And the person who I was calling on was so cavalier and said, you may have the stats, but we're not going to advertise to Black people. Forget it. And I was so incensed because she's dismissing me. She's dismissing my mother. She's dismissing my father, my cousins, my family, and everyone who looks like me. I can't let this go. And so I cried. I went out in the hallway and I shed a tear because my innocence, I guess, was gone. There was no, for some reason, I thought there was an opportunity for some level of equality or some level of health equity. And I said, crying is not going to make the difference. So I went back to the office and I decided to write the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company with a long letter and to talk about my experience and to talk about the illnesses that Black folks have and why are you not advertising to them about the illnesses that plague them the most? Why? It's a business decision, right? You have an opportunity to make money. I don't understand why you're overlooking this community. And believe it or not, I got a letter back inviting me to come to that company to have a conversation. And what is it? All you need is just that little taste of victory. And can't turn me around. That's all I needed. And I've been full throttle ever since.
Well, dear sister, we appreciate you. Our brother Dupree Kelly had to jump off. We seen while he was on the call, he was out serving the community.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Serving the community. So he had to jump off. But again, we thank God, dear brother, for all that, he has done. And by God's grace, all he will continue to do. We see our sister Donna, another revolutionary spirit and soul, always advocating on behalf of our people, those who are on the street, those who are behind bars. Our sister Donna is always advocating. We know that when Jesus was on the cross, he was surrounded by 6 women and 1 man. And we've been taught that is symbolic of how the Black man's condition has been.
That's right.
Crucified, but around us, praying over us has been the Black woman. Even when Lazarus was even when Lazarus was in the grave, there was Mary and Martha there shedding tears. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. And Jesus wept, right? But we know that the Black woman has been our Mary and our Martha. Sister Rosalind, you are our Mary and our Martha, as the Black man is like Lazarus right now, laying in the grave of ignorance in terms of his health, right? Sister Roundtree, you've been like our Mary and Martha. Sister Donna, you've been like our Mary and Martha.
Yeah, Lord.
We've been dragging our feet. The Black man and the Black
every
woman.
Moses, Joshua, and Jesus need a Mary and a Martha.
That's right. We've been dragging our feet, and the Black woman's been standing up, surrounding that cross while we've been being crucified. So our sister Donna is here. So again, we know that many of the health challenges and the disparities that we as the people suffer from, it has a genesis, it has an origin. We are just not unhealthy because we're unhealthy. But again, we have gone through something, and a lot of our eating habits, our eating patterns, they're generational. So our health disparities have been a generational curse.
Yes.
And we know that the food has been weaponized against us. So many studies have come out how these fast food companies intentionally target Black and Hispanic youth. And so we see this autism epidemic. We see this cancer epidemic among Black men, in particular in America. And this is not by accident, but it's because we have not been as vigilant as we could and should be.
That's right.
And that's why a sister like Rosalind is so important She's so important. Everybody may don't understand and they can't
That's
do what she
right.
does because they don't have her pedagogy. But we want to support our sister because it's not maybe for me to be in that space, but our sister is in that space. And we want to help her. We want to support her. We want to back her. We want to advocate on her behalf. And we want to support her. Because when she's trying to be a disruptor in those spaces, she needs prayer, Reverend Roundtree. Because you can't be in those spaces. And we're talking about a lot of money. The pharmaceutical companies, we know that this is big business we talking about.
Talking
business
billions.
is warfare. Business is warfare. When you start messing with people's money, no, they don't play that. So Sister Rosalind needs a community around her, protecting her, letting them know that she's not by herself and that Black health matters.
It does matter, and I think we support people when we educate people. The scriptures declare that our people perish because of lack of knowledge. And for too long, we have waited for the people to come to us. And we know usually when they come to us, it's a tragic situation and something going on. But when we go to the community, then we go to them. When we go to them, they can come on their own and learn certain things about the health. You know, when you talk about prostate cancer and stuff like that and getting that colonoscopy. I remember for years, I won't go get that colonoscopy. I won't bend it over. They had to put me to sleep and do that. But now I get it done every 5 years because I had one of my doctors female tell me, said, you're not going to look good with that bag on the side. And that's all it took from her to tell me that. Wake me up. And as a pastor, we are, you know, sometimes we can become so charismatic that we think we can pray everything away and think we can lay hands on everything. But God has doctors here for a reason, and all my doctors are doctors of color. So they come to me straight up. They let me know what's going on. And I'll never forget my doctor. She in New York now, and she told me at the time when I was 426, she said, you either gonna get yourself together, or she tell you, excuse the vernacular, she said, otherwise your big ass gonna be dead if you have another heart attack.
Wow.
And that's what I needed. She was straight up with me. She didn't play with me. It won't no Reverend Pastor, I don't want to say this to you. I don't want to say that to you. She said, if you don't leave that sweet potato pie alone that them sisters making, and that everything that they put on that table, you don't have to eat everything. You know.
So what I hear, Pastor Ali, you're a walking You're a walking testimony, huh?
I'm a walking testimony.
A real walking testimony. But wait a minute. Thank God for Lord Jesus, First Lady Belina Ali, because I'm here to tell you that sister is a soldier all by herself. So once he got it right, he had to keep it right, because you know that's the rest of the process. You know what? Once you get where you need to be, now you got to sustain and maintain
sustainability,
that.
Right?
And Councilwoman Donna, and the enemy still tried to give him some challenges, but I tell you right now, Lady Belina said, "Come on, bring your best shot, because my husband shall live and not die."
And that's why I'm here. And Sister Rosalind, I'd like for you to address the stress.
See, that's what everybody needs in their life. Yeah. Somebody's going to tell them that they're going to listen to, because everybody don't listen to everybody.
That's right.
And young folks are the worst. They think they know everything already, so you can't tell them nothing about life, let alone health, because they know everything. Yeah. It's either some type of controversy or, what'd you say, Councilwoman?
I was Sister Rosalind, because Pastor Ali just said he wants her to address stress. I think there's a doctor, she was on the Karen Hunter show, and she's from Howard, but she's supposed speaking, I heard her speaking yesterday about something going on in Newark. There was a speaker, and he started talking about mental health, and the men, it might have been at the men's prayer breakfast, and one brother told one brother, and then the next thing you know, all the brothers begin to share with each other how helpful it was to start get counseling and just start dealing with this mental health, because the stress that they're dealing with, and maybe the old way we were taught, you don't cry, you don't tell nobody, you a man, you hold it in, and all of that other stuff was perhaps we need to revise that lesson.
Absolutely. I mean, you see our young people, the rates of suicide are up
I was
for
just getting ready to say that.
young Black men.
Stress will either kill you or make you kill you.
And our sister Rosalind talked about it. I mean, it's in this book, Medical Apartheid.
Yes.
In terms of where these quote unquote doctors, use scientific racism to come up with these old wives' tales about Black folks not feeling pain, and they would not use anesthesia on Black women because they felt like she was savage or she was tough or her Black skin was different. So a lot of these, I would say, these urban legends or these dysfunctional beliefs, they come from that time. It was not nothing that we came up with, because even on the plantation, we had an alternative way or method. We had what they call witch doctors, or those who would go and get herbs or go and get in the gardens and, try to heal us naturally. And they begin to create laws to ban Black men and women, even during that time, from trying to create natural remedies, which we as a people were used to. So they have always come up with these falsehoods as it relates to Black folks and our bodies and how we feel different and how we are different. So now it carried on, and it's been passed down generationally, where we were taught not to cry. You don't feel pain. Do you know in South Carolina, they used to have what they call laughing barrels? Because one of the Jim Crow etiquettes was that Black people, when we looked at white folks, we had to be straight faced or it was a sign of disrespect. So if something was funny, we had to stick our head in a laughing barrel. So when you talk about, just imagine that. Forget having mental health. They didn't even want us to laugh or look like we were having a good time in this country. And this is what we have gone through as a people. And I'm saying that when you talk about Black health, those things cannot be dismissed. Not that we stay on them, but as it's said in another community, never again. But you can't say never again if you don't know what was. You'll never know what is, and you'll be ill prepared for what is yet to come. So we have to learn the origin of a lot of the behaviors and the beliefs that we have as it relates to health, and why we feel certain ways about not going to get a checkup or not going to the dentist. It has a root in something, and many of us don't know that root. So once we learn the root, then maybe we can overcome it.
Right. That's our summit is going to show you another side of what Black health can look like. Because like you said, so many of us, even, one of the reasons, again, why I launched Black Health Matters, my grandparents died too soon. And I still don't know the reason why my grandmother died, right? Because nobody talked about it. So we're showing another side of what Black health can be. You're going to find nurses. You're going to find doctors. You're going to find mental health advocates who are all about coming up with ways to help us be healthy and to sustain those healthy behaviors. So it's going to be a whole lot of healing going on. Plus screenings. We're going to screen for blood pressure. We're going to do vision screenings, hearing screenings. People have diabetes. We're going to talk about wound care and show how you can bind and help your wounds. We're giving away free sanitizing kits, courtesy of Lysol. So, I mean, there'll be so many screenings, community activists. You can even get a free mental health check virtually.
Wow.
You just sign up and a licensed professional will contact you. So there will be so many services, in addition to the fun, the laughter, the free food, the games, the prizes. It's going to be amazing.
Sister Rosalind, the only thing I can say is I think about President Obama. He gets elected, and our first lady, she takes on our health.
Right.
And from the school lunch, to explaining high blood pressure and diabetes. And it was
And a
something
garden. She planted a garden to teach young
growing
people
your own, growing on your phone, and was thought that she was trying to teach kids to build a nuclear bomb or something. And then come up to this last couple of years and talking about um, educating us, and we've been talking about it a long time, but showing us through history as a people. And then again, I mean, this whole thing about tearing us down, we have to, and we talk about it often on here, have to get back to having our own schools because we're definitely not the public sector, and the public sector really wants to, in my opinion, keep us down. That we have to communities do come home and go back to school and learn about ourselves from a wellness standpoint and from an educational standpoint.
That's right. That's right. And I think our sister is, in her own way, again, she's a catalyst for all that you're talking about in terms of Sister Donna, us having a certain level of autonomy and independence. And we know that it has always been the objective of those who have been in power to separate our learned from our unlearned, right? There was a donkey and a colt tied up, and Jesus went.
That's right.
And he rode in on that donkey, which I was taught represents the unlearned masses, but he wanted that colt. And he teaches us that the colt is the learned, the Dr. Rosalind's and the you Sister Donnas and the Dupree Kellys. And they've always wanted to separate those of us who know from those of us who don't know. Put you somewhere in the suburbs on a corner office and you work for us, right? But we thank our Sister Rosalind for coming back and not betraying her ancestors and using the best of what we gave her to be a disruptor and not to be imprisoned by those creature comforts. We know that you have had to sacrifice a lot, Sister Rock, and that's what maybe you need to talk about in terms of the sacrifices that you have had to make in trying to provide this type of platform and this type of summit. We know that it has not been easy, and it will not be easy because, again, you're talking about a $1 billion industry, the pharmaceutical company. So it's in somebody's best interest at some point that we be kind of sick, right? So if our Sister Rosalind is now disrupting those spaces, then she's stopping somebody's money. And we know that can be very dangerous in this country. Very, very dangerous. And particularly if you're black, but for a black woman. So again, we thank you, dear sister, for standing up on truth. And we're gonna keep thanking her. That's right. This ain't no show about gossip and sensationalism. No, we want to thank our sister, and we're gonna celebrate our sister. That's right. That's right. We're gonna celebrate our sister, not tear our sister down, but we thank her and we love her, and we want to constantly, because there's another young Rosalind somewhere out there watching this, and maybe she don't have the courage, but she sees things happening that she knows not right. And Dr. Rosalind, she just don't know what to do. Well, could you just for a moment inspire her or inspire them and why it's so necessary?
I am so inspired by you.
Wow.
You are just amazing. Wow. Oh my goodness. I am inspired by you. That's who I get my energy from.
Wonderful, dear sister.
You have just literally, and I don't get, what is it? I'm not ever at a loss for words, but your passion and your insightfulness is just a prize. I thank you for exposing me to your brilliance.
Thank you, Sister Rosin. I really do.
And I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person.
Oh no, you're a doctor, sister. You're a doctor, sister.
You're healing the community.
Hey, that's right. Pastor Ali. Jesus said in Luke 5:32, they that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick.
That's
I
right.
came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.
So
that's right.
Sister Rosalind, you are a doctor. You didn't have to matriculate. You didn't have to matriculate through certain universities to get to be called a doctor, because you are a healer, dear sister. And our people need healing, and that's what you're doing. You're healing us from the ignorance that a lot of us carry from generations, right? Of falsehood. So you are healing us by exposing us to knowledge. And I know you are a humble sister and a humble son. I'm not a doctor, but no, you are a doctor to us, dear sister.
And what is a healer? To make
you
whole.
are a doctor.
To make whole. That's what healing is. To make whole.
And I want to say this too.
To make whole.
And I want to say this too. You know, in the Lord's Prayer, because we got to talk about eating. The first thing Jesus said was what? Our Father, this day, give us our daily bread. He ain't say pray. He said give us. He asked for bread first.
Right.
Why? Because we are physical and material beings, and we got to be sustained by a certain caliber of food. I remember, Pastor Rountree, that in the good by and by, Pastor Ali, they said it was a place of milk and honey. Milk, things of substance. So we need some good food to sustain our good bodies.
And our minds.
And our minds.
That's right.
That's right.
So we're not so hyper abstract now, right? As pastors and ministers, that we forsake the body, right? That we need nourishment, we need nutrition, and we know that that's a big part of the health disparity in our community. So, Sister Rosalind, as we draw to end, could you maybe just speak on that very briefly in terms of nutrition?
Yes, you know what's interesting is food is medicine.
That's right.
Food is medicine, and you know it's hard to try to articulate. But for example, my dear boyfriend, I say, "What are you eating? It's ridiculous." and then I know he likes cars, he likes antique cars, whatever. And I have to say, look, when it comes time to put gas in that car, are you putting water in it? Are you putting sand in the engine? No, you drive around because you have to get the right gas. I said, when it's time for an engine check, do you continue to drive the car or do you take it further to the mechanic to get the engine check? The same thing. Just like you put premium gas in your car, you have to put premium food in your body for it to function. You'll live a lot longer and you'll have less problems.
Wow, wonderful, my dear sister. So any closing remarks from you, dear sister, as we wrap it up? Any closing remarks?
I thank you all for all that you all do. You know, we're in Newark for a reason. And I marvel. I thought I knew a little bit about Newark because I live a few miles out, but I really didn't know all the jewels of Newark. And I'm meeting you all, and I'm just so incredibly impressed. And I thank you for your support of this program. And, you know, let's continue to work together. And let's make, you know, our summits an annual. And I guess the best thing will be that maybe one day we won't have to do summits. That health
that's right.
So well embedded into our communities and into our lifestyles that you'll put me out of business. So that would be a wonderful goal. But until then, I look forward to working with you all. Thank you all for all that you do.
Bless you.
Wow.
Bless you.
Thank you, my dear sister. May God continue to bless you and protect you and your family. We're going to keep you in our prayers. Anything that we can do, dear sister, we're here. And we love you.
I don't know how, Minister, I don't know how we can be so excited about all she's talking about and not talk about tomorrow.
Oh, we got to talk about tomorrow.
In the city of Newark. Tomorrow.
That's right.
Talk about it. Talk about
all day long. Sister Rosalind is going to be in the city of Newark. Do you want to talk about it now, Liv?
Yes, I will say I don't want to just say we have worked hard. You all have worked hard as well. We are bringing a world-class program to Newark. We are leaving no stone unturned. This will be a high-value, high-impact program. We have screenings, we have doctors, we have food, and you're going to have so much fun. We're even bringing in the guru of abs. He has a senior body sculpting class that you can take, and you don't have to stand up. You'll be seated when you're doing this class. So for people who have disabilities, who don't think they can move and get their heart rate up, they will be pleasantly surprised. So between our breast cancer sessions, our sessions on amyloidosis, kidney disease, mental health, and more, We even are going to have Malik Yoba talk about his challenges with mental health. He too had a heart condition that put him into depression. And he talks about how that, really depressed him, and how walking and talking with other men kind of brought him back. So he'll talk about that. We'll have a therapist there. So you'll find almost everything under the sun. We have to thank University Hospital for the screenings, Carewell Health, the sororities, the fraternities that have mobilized around this. When I say it's a beautiful thing, because all I can just tell you, it's by us, for us. It's going to be the best program that you've seen nationally happening in Newark.
So let me just tell you where it's going to take place. That might help.
Go ahead.
That's a wonderful story.
I got it. The Black Health Matters Spring Summit will take place at the Donald M. Payne Technical High School on tomorrow. I wish if I was in the mass shit of the church, I would say, everybody say tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
From 8:30 to 4 p.m., they're going to incorporate the best and brightest physicians from all over the country to provide panel talks and presentations. It is all geared to provide a safe place for us to talk about the practice of good health, as well as the barriers they may prevent us from moving forward when it comes to our health. The entire day is free. I don't like to use the free word, at no cost. They're going to provide breakfast, snacks, and lunch. There are going to be prizes and screenings. The entire day is meant to educate, motivate, and provide real life solutions. Oh, we are so excited. This is just going to be amazing. So I'm just.
And if I can,
my schedule's got 10 things, but I said, get me to Donald Payne. Make sure it's on my schedule. Make sure, I told my staff, make sure this flyer is shared. We've got to share the flyer. Ed Riley, I'm going to get it to you. We've got to make sure that we tell as many people. Repetition is the mother of not just learning, but even now, somebody on All Politics Are Local, the number one hip-hop radio. Come on, you know, Donna. Someone on here tonight is going to look at Minister Haqq Muhammad and have heard Rosalind Young Daniels and Pastor Ali's testimony, Councilwoman, and say, let me get my butt over there as soon as possible.
And Sister Rosalind, I have to tell you, as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking, and then Councilwoman Roundtree, you go to give the announcement. I'm thinking Payne Sr. will be smiling because one of his biggest events in Newark was the health fair that he would do annually, and he would do it over at the university over there, and he would be talking about things that are impactful to our community, high blood pressure and diabetes, and to see that you are housing it in the Payne's the Payne Vocational School is just. Look at God. That's all I have to say.
What you say. Yeah.
That's right.
Mr. Rosalind, who's your favorite rap artist?
Oh, I would have to say Do It All.
Oh, you know what to say. That's 2023, you gave the right answer.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Y'all hear that?
I really appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yes.
And God bless
tomorrow.
You. We're going to keep you lifted in prayer.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Be blessed. Be blessed.
Thank you.
God bless you. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Brother Jonathan, do we got enough
wait
time
a minute, he
to close
didn't
an announcements?
Yeah, make the announcements. Yeah, make the announcements.
Reverend Roundtree, go ahead, my dear sister.
Okay, so on while we're on the Black Health Matters, an organization came to me about doing something for lupus. Another I should say, attack on our bodies that people don't talk a lot about. I'm doing a basketball tournament for Lupus Awareness Month on next Thursday beginning at 6 p.m. at the JFK Recreational Center. I'll be sending it to Ed Riley so he can get the word out, Donna, the flyer. It'll be sponsored by myself, my office, of course. I brought in and asked Councilman Kelly and Crump, because they did a walk. But a different organization asked me would I do some events. So I said, well, let's come together and get it done. So Thursday, there'll be 2 teams coming together. Next year, we're going to do uniforms, all of that. But we're going to have some people there speaking about lupus in between and halftime. And just to be aware of what this is and where they can get some services. Sometimes people's bodies are attacked and they don't know who to call. They just take the doctors. They get no counseling. They don't know. People just go. 14-year-old girl told me she was ready to end it all once she found out she had it. When she found out what could happen. I met her here in my office. So I said, oh, no, I'm getting ready to jump on this. Of course, we already know the men's meeting is going on as we speak tonight.
That's right.
The men's meeting is going on as we speak. And there's some other announcements, but I'm going to start forwarding at Riley the announcements, so that there's a bike ride going on right now with the Brick City Peace Collective as we speak. I normally go to see him off, and I just couldn't. I'm trying to do, as Pastor Ali says, like, pace myself.
Is the bike ride for the Brick City Peace Collective, is that for scholarships, or is it for like what is that for?
I'm getting ready to pull the flyer up for you right now, but while I'm doing that, Pastor Ali,
I just say, let us be aware. I request prayers for those who are understanding, because so much changing with autism. And so many of our young people are autism. I have 2 great-grandchildren that have autism. And then I have a young child in my church that's dealing with autism, and they're changing the parameters on when they check for it. They used to not check for it till they were 4 years old and try to identify it. But we know there is a need, because so many of our kids, many of them have been misdiagnosed as autistic, but many of them are autistic and are not getting proper treatment. So I ask you, just keep the young people in prayer with their families, because most of the children that suffer from autism, parents are young. So we want to keep that at the forefront.
And then you have parents that are in denial. I was with a parent the other day, and I said something to the little boy because he called his mother a liar in the middle of an interview or something was going on. And I was like, wait a minute. He says, lies, my lies. She was saying something. And this boy is very articulate. And then he started doing his hands like this. So there are different signs. And I had to pull it to the side for the people that were in the room, because one of the ladies with me, one of the social workers started crying. So that's something that really needs our awareness. But the Light Up the City bike ride is the bike riders coming together, riding through the community to bring an awareness in regards to decreasing violence. And creating a better city for all. Brother John, I had to get that out.
No, thank you. No, and I'm always pressing you for time, and I'm like, hey, we know we're over time. But when you said that the Peace Collective was having a bike ride, I just wanted to know what it was for and where. Just
so so they're doing a 12 to 15 mile ride throughout the city of Newark. Now they started at 480 Clinton Avenue. I'm thinking I'd run into them somewhere on my way to my next event. But they started at 480 Clinton Avenue at 6 p.m., 6:30 this evening, and they're riding through with their lights on. They did it last year as well. I was there when they took off. Light up the city with your lights. So they got lights on, so they'll probably be riding surely through the darkness.
Well, thank you.
Chaplain, Sergeant at Arms.
And also thank you for staying on for an extra 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, brother John.
I didn't think that would be a challenge. I didn't think that would be a challenge, right? For an extra 15 minutes. I was like, I maybe if I extend the program, and so that was good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you so much, dear brother. Baba Zaid, we really love you. We appreciate you.
Love you, Baba.
Our dear Reverend Brother Dr. Forrest, we appreciate your fight, your struggle. Thank you. We in full support. We in full support and solidarity with you and everybody at Seton Hall and those who are fighting hard to establish the studies program there. So we love you all. May God bless you. Thank you. Have a great night.
Hey.
Thank you. Much respect. Much respect. And see you next month. That was the Disciples on All Politics Are Local. America's number one political hip hop talk show, streaming talk show, and we always like having them on. Always love having them on together. When they started off today, there was a commendation for Minister Haqq Muhammad and the great job he did at Gospel Fest, and he was the first non-Christian. Not first Muslim minister to speak at apparently the first Muslim minister to speak at Gospel Fest. And it was noted that he speaks to Christian audiences all the time because there's a certain unity that they have and a certain talent that they have for that. So always much respect for the work.
He came to St. James He came to St. James and spoke. Whew.
Yeah, Christian, that he's always in Christian churches, right? Like, and Christian ministers love inviting him. And I think that is a strength of our community, right? Like, we don't get into that, religion.
Nation works the Bible.
Right.
Nation of
What did you
Islam
say, brother?
What did you say, Zayed?
The Nation of Islam works the Bible. Don't just work the Quran. More of us, who have a more Sunni or Orthodox lens will use more of the Quran, but the Nation is a very Old Testament organization in history, and they know how to the Bible, and it's definitely been one of the hallmarks of Farrakhan's ministry.
And this is a great segue into my mentor, right? Someone who's meant a lot to my life, and a lot of other people's lives as well. And that's the Reverend Dr. Forrest Pritchett, who is the interim chair of Africana Studies at Seton Hall University. He has been a fixture at Seton Hall University, helping Black people for literally decades. I ran into somebody who I didn't know, just random made an introduction, and she said she went to Seton Hall. She graduated from Seton Hall somewhere in the late 90s, and I was like, of course you must know Professor Dr. Pritchett, right? And she said, yes, he lent me a book. He was so kind and so generous. And we'll talk about like other parts of Seton Hall not being as nice, but specifically mentioned, yes, Dr. Forrest Pritchett, he made sure that everyone would feel welcome, even if other parts in the atmosphere did not. Professor Pritchett did. Remembered you fondly. There's someone I didn't know, right? Graduated like over 20 years ago. Well, almost 25 years ago. Remembered you for the work.
Jonathan, one of the reasons that I decided over 50 years ago, and I hope everybody can hear me because your audio has been breaking up tonight. But one of the other reasons why I decided to plant myself at a predominantly white institution versus, I think, the love of my heart, though, saying there have been I'd like to have been a president of a historically Black college and university. But I also knew that the historically white would, even with the increasing amount of integration that we were going to be seeing between the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, would probably still also be somewhat hostile to the increasing numbers of Black and brown people. So I thought it would actually require more of my soul and spirit to plant myself at a predominantly white school and to see to it that it became sacred spaces also and safe spaces for our people. And I find that ironic because 30 and 40 years later, now everybody's using the terminology safe spaces.
Right.
But many of us that we were on a divine calling took it upon ourselves individually and collectively that we could make those spaces hospitable. I remember one of the greatest tributes I thought I received a number of years ago. We were giving a dinner for our Martin Luther King scholars who were graduating, and we allowed each parent of one of the scholars to speak. And one of the scholars' mothers happened to be a minister, and she also happened to be a physician who graduated from Spelman. And when this mother took to the phone, that is the microphone, she indicated how she really wanted her daughter at the beginning of her daughter's in her senior year looking for colleges, she really wanted her daughter to go to Spelman. She said, but after we looked at the Martin Luther King Leadership Program at Seton Hall, and she said, and met Reverend Pritchett, and she said, we were somewhat guaranteed in our hearts that we felt like she'd be getting sort of a college experience in a predominantly white environment. And I took that as a compliment, because it wasn't just about what I could do as an individual. It was about making sure that every organization that was put together by the Black students understood that it wasn't about just having a good time in college, but that we wanted to have a transformational cultural experience for each and every brother and sister who elected to come to Seton Hall University. But this is the kind of mantra that many of us as professionals, as we would meet each other at different conferences and we would sit and have coffee together, we put together these paradigms. One of my, I can still remember very clearly when I started in higher education in 1969. 2 years later, I believe I was at a national conference for college admissions officers and college financial officers, which I was at that time. And I met one of the, someone at the conference was from Harvard University, and someone else was from Ohio State. So as we sat and talked, this model became even realer for all of us, because we said, look, maybe it should not, for some of us who are among the first to work in these environments, probably it shouldn't be just about our careers, and we should not be jumping around between various institutions just building our individual careers, but perhaps we should stay and, like Frederick Douglass might say, plow up the field so that the field is more receptive. That is, the field being synonymous with each of the universities we would work at. That the field would be.
I was going to say, like right now, Dr. Pritchett, I think right now is the embodiment of what you're talking about, because there was recently a protest at Seton Hall University. I believe it ended on Monday, and it was to get Africana studies, and it was pretty intense in terms of there was a sit-in in the president's office that lasted multiple days. You were the interim chair because the former chair left out of disagreements with the university and the direction of Africana studies. You wrote a letter supporting the students, like you are chair of the Africana study, the interim chair of the Africana Studies Department, and you wrote a letter supporting the kids going into the president. So the president appointed you, and you're like, these kids, they should be in your office because you should be ashamed of yourself. You literally told the president of the university that just appointed you as interim chair, you were like, y'all need to be ashamed. Can you tell us what happened? How did it end? And what are some of the things that were met? As the
Thank
current
you very much.
chair,
Students had 7 demands.
What does this protest mean?
I think it might be a connection
issue.
Well,
Professor Pritchett, I
reflect.
Dr. Pritchett, I think we're lagging. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
I can hear you well, yes.
Okay, do you hear me well in a
but
delayed
there are
way?
Yeah,
periodic.
you're lagging.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's breaking up in fragments.
Okay, can you, before you answer the question, talking about it, can you exit out and then come back in?
Yeah.
Because that might cure it. If you exit out the stream and then come back in, and then we'll put you back in and see if it helps.
There's a delay. So,
All right.
okay.
Yeah, there's definitely a lagging delay,
Yeah.
but that might be a connection issue. If you log out and then log back in, it might be helpful.
You want me to close out?
Yeah, to close out and then come back in.
Come back in, yes.
Go out of the studio, come back in, and that might help.
And while Dr. Pritchett is doing that, he mentioned how he spoke to a parent, and that conversation with that parent may have been the difference of that child coming to school or not, because it's very parents are very I went and got my and who braided my hair, she was talking about her children going to school, but wanted them to commute because she was very concerned with them being away from home and, the safety. So that was interesting that he said talking to that parent made a difference, and that mom feeling more secure about her baby being away from home.
So, Professor Pritchett, the
Yes.
protest that just
Okay, I'm
happened.
back.
So, how
I'm
did it
living in
end?
color.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
okay, are you back?
Are we good?
And live in cover.
Yes.
Okay, so let us
Just
know.
checking. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can see you. We can hear you. All right, you're still lagging, but I think that when you
Good.
start talking, it should be fine.
All right. So I'll start. I'm sorry. What are you saying, Jonathan?
Oh, I said that when you start talking, it should be fine. We like what happened
Okay, gotcha.
in the protest? How did it end?
Sure.
They took over the building. They're there. We heard that there were a series of people, even politicians, that came in. What happened and how did it end?
Certainly. The students informed the administration that they would be willing to go into negotiations, but they were going to remain occupying President's Hall until such time as the university and through the administration gave assurances of lack of reprisals and that they would show a gesture of goodwill. So one week ago on Monday, we had the first summary meeting. Invited to that meeting as just as an FYI, we had the longest tenured African American professor there, Dr. Larry Green from the History Department. When you mentioned Brittany Timberlake, Assemblywoman Timberlake, is a twice of Seton Hall with her bachelor's as well as her, and I believe she was also had done most of the work to probably do a minor in Africana studies. She let it be known to the university also ahead of that meeting that she was interested and concerned about this, and she wanted to make sure that the students were getting a fair shake, so to speak, in these deliberations. So we had community accountability, we had accountability factors present also from within the university. Then the highest ranking faculty members at the university representing the faculty senate, as well as the new interim dean for the College of Arts and Sciences. So that may be, we were up to like close to 15 to 18 people in that room for these negotiations. As some of you may remember, there were 7 demands that were being given by the students, covering everything from the university's protest policy, which the students deemed to be somewhat regressive. The students were requesting a cluster hire. They wanted the Africana Studies program to be reinstated to a departmental status. They wanted additionally a tenured director of Africana Studies to be hired. They wanted the students who were going to be involved in the review of candidates. The university had allowed one student to have voting privileges, and the Protect the AFAM movement wanted all of 3 students who would be active in that committee to have voting status. They wanted all of the advertisements that speak about the availability of Africana Studies at the university. They wanted more ads, but they wanted the ads to be a little bit more truthful and to give more insight to the real status at the university. And I'll go back over all these points in a little bit more detail once all 7, and they wanted the Black House reinstated on the campus. So now we'll do a little microscopic view of each of those policies, and we'll indicate. Earlier this week, today being Friday, on Tuesday, we met and between the administration and the representatives of the Protect Afghan movement, resolution was gotten on all of these items to the following extent. The students were pointed out that the protest policy number 1 that was in place, which requires students to actually get a permit on campus to designate the spots they would like to protest at and so forth. The students had enough insight to indicate that protest policy was not placed, into the policy agenda by the university, generically at any point. It became a reaction to the Concern 44 movement of 4 to 5 years ago. So therefore, the students thought it was not an objective policy at all, that it was already tainted, given the cover for the last protest. So that indeed, that's why I knew early on, I think the second day of the protest, the president of the university had issued a statement that talked about what the students were asking for, and then he mentioned what the position of the university was. He also indicated that a number of the protesters had taken over illegally a president's hall, the entire building, where the president and the executive vice presidents are located, and all of the associate vice provosts and all of so forth. But he indicated that they would be subject to disciplinary action, which caused me to say that someone needs to speak clearly here, with the thought of authoritarianism, and you have broken our rules. Therefore, maybe we are not concerned about what you are asking for. You are out of order, and we are going to maintain order. I want to sure university not operating out of simply the authority that they had to simply dismiss everything being asked for by these students. And that number 2, I wanted to make sure that the university was not operating out of the sense of fear. I can recall very clearly 4 to 5 years ago during the Concern 44 movement, while I was simply involved at that point in time with what we then called studies and the advisement of all first-year students. I had people seeking my opinion and thoughts, and people who just wanted to tell me, for example, just how the President's Hall was being destroyed by hooligans that had over, and how religious relics sacred to the Catholic Church were being destroyed, and that there was filth all over the place and trash. Well, both of those ended up being not true at all. Nothing had been destroyed.
Wait, so particularly,
yes, it was a.
So there were rumors of.
This is 4 years ago now. Yeah, this was a misrepresentation campaign. Exactly, this was a misrepresentation campaign that was launched by the forces, perhaps of evil, whomever took responsibility for telling these lies. So we knew that for the most part. The rumor mill simply had convinced, most probably non-Black people that these hooligans were gangsters and thugs, had no respect for the Catholic Church, nor Catholic values, nor the eloquent and antique President's Hall. And these were simply not true at all. It was a campaign of misinformation. And I had to point that out very clearly, that the university should not go down that road again in terms of, we have seen in history, for example, we saw this with Kent State University. Students were protesting the war in Vietnam, and, the university officials, after a few days, called in the National Guard. And students ended up being killed because when we look at versus listening to the protesters and what they are asking for versus only living behind the veil of one's We can very bad misinterpret, if you would. So that really revolved around the protest policy, and I immediately requested that there be a sense of amnesty for all of the protesters. They would not be overly and critically judged, but understand that these young people were simply asserting a very simple truth. They had already signed up to be Africana Studies majors and minors. Once you have signed literally and committed to that pathway of action, you cannot unsign, or once you determine that, let's say that all of the courses you need to graduate in Africana Studies, if that were the case, as your major and minor are not in place. And students wanted, literally, they wanted a commitment from the university to say that we will ensure that what you need to do, every faculty member, every course, every credit you need to obtain will be in place. That is literally another way to see exactly what this entire protest was all about. The students wanted, right now, the at the university will, during the past year, would have consisted of one full-time professional, Dr. Kelly Harris, and 5 or 6 to 10 individuals who were all, we'll say, part-timers, or some of the faculty were full-time faculty in other departments, such as the history department, Dr. Green, and they may teach as a part of their load during the year 1 or 2 courses for the Africana program. Students really thought that that's, in today's world, why can't the university make a greater commitment? That they use the terminology, sometimes if you don't really have an Africana Studies or Black Studies professional handling that kind of a course, is this not an example of watering down the content? So that's something that could be debated. But for the most part, from the student perspective, listening to them, it's a genuine observation. They are indicating they would rather be in an environment in which the entire focus of lectures and the discussion that comes out of that would revolve around, issue concerns to the Black experience in America, and that's worthy of discussing. They also wanted the department to have to be reinstated to full-time status. So some of you may have heard the brief timeline, which I do not mind mentioning now very, very, very concisely. The program at the university was the first for any college or university in the state, and it came about in 1970. And we would be remiss if we did not also mention that students at the university began another protest that started approximately 1968, in which they were asking for a Black Studies program, as well as a substantial scholarship that would recruit African-American students all over the country to the city. Ultimately, that scholarship was called the Martin Luther King Scholarship. And people like Imamu Imeri Baraka, better known to a few people as Leroy Jones, the poet laureate of the state of New Jersey. He had already, prior to that, had already begun a discussion with Monsignor Fay, the newly elected president at the university. So one of Father Fay's responses to the students was, hey, we're on it. We are talking to local officials and citizens from the Newark community, and we are discussing ways in which the university can be a bit more viable. That leads to the university bringing in Dr. George Jackson, African-American psychologist, who becomes the visionary, who takes a look at our history, and he looks at the visionary aspects of what should, under ideal sort of consistent, culturally clear Black Studies program look like. And not only did they design it, Dr. Jackson insisted that the program would not be a department lodged within another school at the university, but it should be a autonomous center where the Black scholar and Black researchers would be free to determine their own research and scholarly agenda. That they should be accountable, not only, we'll say in one sense, within the university structure, that it would be normal bureaucratic checkpoints. He said, but they should also be accountable to the community. And in that context, State Senator Winona Lippman served ultimately as the chairperson of our community advisory board. So this was indeed a very progressive model that emerged in 1970. But within 12 to 14 years of that, by the early 80s, the university was about, at that point, to dismantle the entire Black Studies operation, where the director of the center had the authority of a dean on the campus. Every year in the fall, hundreds of people would go up to Seton Hall's campus when they did their annual Black Studies Gala, where they would have a conference format followed by, usually on Friday or Saturday evening, there would be a dinner and a gala, and some outstanding individual from the national African American community who had made substantial contributions would be given an honorary doctorate. So in those days, Seton Hall was almost seen as the Mecca. It was seen as the that mountaintop experience.
Wow.
In New York area. Up once again by the early 80s, it was downsized to be a department. So we go from having in 1970, from having a director and an assistant director, and then 5 to 6 full-time faculty. So that here you had, in total, that would have 7 professionals who were teaching classes. And these courses went all the way from studying African civilization to studying the Black child. So one must understand that. I might add, then by the late 80s, there was so much antagonisms from other departments within the College of Arts and Sciences that the next move and shift was to further downsize that department. No other department wanted to be affiliated with it. And so that, even professional faculty from other departments did not wish to be in collaboration with then department, which was called African American Studies. A few years later, there was a conceptual shift to make it Africana Studies. And by the time we were ready to hire Dr. Harris, we were, prior to bringing him on board, literally the Africana Studies chairperson was a half-time person who half of the time she taught in English and the other half of the time she taught in Africana Studies. The students would not have prior to bringing Dr. Kelly Harris on board. All right, so now we're moving on to their demand number 4, which would be new in this context. They wanted, in the spirit of the original configuration of the Black Study Center, they wanted the university to have a full-time tenured director. The difference here, so that one would not be confused between what a chairperson does and what a community director would do. The community director would be responsible for community outreach, making sure our community services were at a high level, and that would be a complement to what the tenured department chair would do, who would handle all the scholarly work, would be writing scholarly articles, and would be on the tenure track. So the position number 4, or object number 4 on their demands, was for a full-time tenured director. And that director would not be a part of the cluster hire that students were asking for that we referred to earlier, where they wanted several faculty to be hired who could be full-time in Africana studies. The last 3 items, which would simply deal with number 5, students wanted to have increased voting status on the selection committee. So we would have to review that by saying throughout there are no students who are involved in the selection and hiring of other faculty, so that all of the hiring committees would be made up of faculty members. Now, normally, once they were going to bring in 3 or 4 candidates, let's say after reviewing 10 or 20, then everybody at the university would have an opportunity to hear lectures given by a person, STEM questions, and to make some input at that level. But the students wanted, on the current search committee for Africana study, they wanted to have full voting status for 3 students, not the one that had been assigned. The last 6 point would be the ads. They want a full disclosure that indeed, that if you were to come to Seton Hall, some of the classes you will have will be direct content coming out of Africana Studies, and that other courses would be cross listings offered by various departments from religious studies, where we teach, for example, Black church. So half of the class will have signed up under religious studies, and the other half of the class would have signed up under Africana Studies. And I am the humble purveyor of that course. We have courses in philosophy. We have courses, in the history department, as in courses in the music of America, featuring, Africana music. So they wanted those ads to be more truthful, and they wanted an increase in the ads themselves. So that, for example, I could see in the near future, at least while I'm still the interim director, I will be able to launch for next fall an Africana Studies conference aimed at high school students. So we can bring them onto the campus, they can meet our students, meet the faculty, but also we're going to be showing them how to apply Africana frameworks to just about any subject they can look at. And we'll also be showing them how, perhaps in developing their essays that they as seniors would be sending off to colleges, how they can incorporate Africana content. And the last of the 7 demands was for the reinstatement of the Black House. And this has quite a history, because there's not one student at Seton Hall right now who would even have knowledge of the Black House. This is something that when they meet our alumni, going back to the 1970s, the alumni would have made the students aware of the fact that there had been a facility at the university had been turned over to our students for them to do with as they would. For example, having maybe art exhibits, having jazz and poetry readings. As a matter of, before we had open mic, we just had the spirit of people expressing themselves through poetry. It is the kind of space that I would say, if I were to say Leroy Jones in his original rollout as a poet, he normally would come up on campus maybe minimum of once a year. And he liked to bring up 2 or 3 jazz musicians to back him up while he would do his poetry readings. So that would be the nature of the framework of the Black House. So I hope that I've done justice to identifying the 7 demands and to give you the update where as a result of the negotiations. So right now, the Black House concept of everything else, that's probably the one that will take the longest amount of time to investigate, plan, and to see how that's going to be resolved. Okay.
So just in terms of the question about faculty, I think it's really important from going from a program to a department, and that seems like an important concession. I remember we talked 2 weeks ago to Dr. Kelly Harris, and he was like the only full-time person there, right? So you're saying that how many people are they going to hire in African American studies?
Right now, the commitment is for 3. Because we are now very late into the cycle. Normally, searches would begin in September. So you can see we're now in May, which in one sense would seem like, it's going to be very difficult for us, but not impossible. possible to bring in 3 hires between now and, let's say, August. We literally might be looking at 8 weeks. We do have a substantial pool. Right now, I believe we have just under 40 folks who have their doctorates or are finishing their doctoral training, who have sent their credentials to the university. As a matter of fact, in order to expedite, once I became involved, which I became involved on Sunday, January the 15th, I would hold up and ask anyone if you can identify the historical significance of January 15th. But on Sunday, January 15th, I was named the interim director of Africana Studies at the university. But I immediately thought that I would contact 5 or 6 of the universities that have the highest production of turning out PhD scholars, to bring to their attention that we were just launching our search, and that I wanted them, in a sense, to bring this to the attention of any of their students who were about to defend their dissertations, so that indeed could be a good representation within our pool. So I think compared to the normal search and the normal number of candidates that might apply, I believe we have a very healthy number. Now we're about to just double back on each of the persons to make sure that they want to remain in the pool of candidates, or have they taken other assignments at this point. So we will be really putting ourselves in high gear to make this a reality for the students.
Nice. Okay, so Zaid, I know that you might have some things to add, and I know that we're getting ready to potentially close out on time, but we still have some because our next guests have not yet shown up. So talk to us. What more do you have anything to add? I know that
Sure.
you were there for some of the protests as well.
Well, I'm glad that there's some movement on the issue. That's the first thing. Right. And I hope that there is enough.
Yes.
To make
and
a difference.
The other thing I normally do is one of the other things I think that any elder should be responsible to do is, we have a number. Seton Hall has a law school. I periodically will participate in programming at the school. I'm very much interested in how they define their role and responsibilities in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But even before we were using those 3 letters, DEI, I think I've always had an excellent relationship with teams of our law school, because I want them to view me from a friendly and familiar lens, and not as an outside agitator, so to speak. But normally what I will do when these, if a protest were to emerge, I will make sure that I can canvass any alumni, Black alumni who are lawyers. They can act as a legal brain trust, so that if any parents were to happen to call me and contact me and have any concerns, I like them to know that from at least my perspective of being supportive of whatever the students are doing, we're being as responsible as possible. We also periodically will have alumni come in representing the various decades, so that they can share their wisdom. They can speak, if you would, to the current condition. We know is to bring in people who have I would say, a mental health perspective. I want to make sure that these students are in the stress that they are dealing with and coping with, as well as their classes. I want to make sure that they all are mentally on even keel. That's awfully important. Sometimes when you are involved in the progress of social transformation, it can bring one's well-being right to the edge of remaining in balance. But we want to make sure that we have consultants who can to make sure they're feeling okay, and that they aren't absorbing, too much of the hatred in the environment. That they are feeling good about themselves and about what they're doing.
That's something that this generation is particularly sensitive to. And I was trying to get some to come on to join you.
Yes, sir.
Tonight.
Jonathan, I'm sorry, Zai. 1 second. Jonathan, can you just mute whoever's not talking?
Okay.
Sorry, Zai.
Yeah, I was just saying they were, they was just saying they were, doing them. They wanted to check out for a minute for their own mental health. They were feeling a little burnt out, but then they'd be willing to come on any other time. But they're very sensitive. This generation, and there's something unique going on with the whole mental health landscape in our community. That's very, very unique to this generation. So I appreciate their sensitivity in the thick of this.
Yeah, so I think that is an incredibly good perspective. We're joined by Troy Smith, who's going to be joining us for the next segment. He's a professor he's a professor in Massachusetts. I had the thing right up here, but I put another link on, and I think that I brought him on to just say hi to Professor Pritchett, because I am certain that you know each other. I met Troy Smith Troy Smith was a debater for Science High School who was older than me. He was one of the founding members of the Science Park High School debate team. Always a legend. He was a legend to me, right? Like we talked about one of the first debaters at Science. I heard about his name before I met him. I met him when he was in college at Bates University, and he was at Seton Hall Upward Bound. So I was a 14-year-old kid at Seton Hall Upward Bound, and I believe he was a freshman or sophomore in college, and he was my journalism instructor there. And I know that if he spent any time on Seton Hall's campus, he knew Dr. Forrest Pritchett. So I just wanted to let them, say hello. Troy, you are
he's muted.
You are muted.
Oh my. Okay, I can hear you.
We can hear you now too.
Okay, terrific. That is great. That is great. Professor Pritchett, sir, it's great to see you. It is an honor. And you haven't aged a bit, sir. You still look good. Good to see you.
Hold on. I've been, yes. Hold on, Professor Pritchett. I'm unmuting you. Okay. You were saying?
Thank you. No, I was just saying God must have a special mission for this very public servant, because when I meet folks from decades ago, and as a matter of fact, some alumni now bringing their and they make that comment, and actually among I'll somewhere between and the fact that Cherokee coming up in our family line out of the plantation of in southeastern North Carolina. And I'm so thankful for that delivered in. That's like
Professor Pritchett, I think that I think we're reaching the limit of the internet connection right now.
Yes, sir. Great to see you. Great to see you.
Okay.
All right. So I think we're getting ready to transition to the next part. But Professor Pritchett, thank you so much for coming on.
And then, and we asked him last week, but Professor Pritchett, this week, while you were doing the work that you were doing with the students, was there any hip hop song that you happened to put on before you went into these meetings, individual or group?
I got into a mix. I always start with the prelude, the precursor to hip hop for me is going to be Marvin Gaye. But I will admit that I listened to a little bit more of Tupac this past week because I was to develop a lesson for one of my classes on music and the evolution, but also I was just thinking about between Biggie and Tupac, and then I had seen a documentary that was being recycled on television about some of the close associates in business of Tupac, and just caused me to want to spend some time listening to that young man in his boldness and how he took command of his space and made it work for him. So that was my pop moment.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Pritchett. Very much appreciated you coming back on, and very much appreciate you letting us know and an update of what was going on with the at Seton Hall. And it's good to know that you are still being a buffer between administration and students, and really trying to help the entire community. So thank you so much. Give Barbara my love,
Jonathan,
and I will.
And Donna, and Baba Saeed. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We got it.
Take care. So that is another wonderful segment.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
show. Have a good show.
Good to see you.
Thank you. So that was another powerful segment on All Politics Are Local. We have been covering what's going on at Seton Hall really for the past 3 weeks, having different professors on talking about Africana studies in general, and that, because the controversy that's going on all over the country, where I'm having conversations with high school debate coaches students in Florida and in other states are being told that they cannot make certain arguments, that are being told that their coaches risk getting fired if they introduce certain arguments. And really, it makes it almost impossible for them to debate other kids in other states who have access to it. So it's one of the craziest things that I've seen in my lifetime when it comes to education. And in just having a debate becomes a legal matter for coaches based on basic argument preparation. And one of the figures that we would talk about a lot inside of academic debate, or anytime you're dealing with African American studies, Africana studies, is Malcolm X. It's May 19th. It's Malcolm X's birthday.
No, I'm ready to jump.
Right. It's Malcolm X's birthday. This is our hip hop segment. I'm going to try to get Rhino on, because I know Rhino's going to be coming on shortly. But I wanted to give extended time to the hip hop segment tonight because I think that hip hop and Malcolm X become incredibly important, right, in terms of what it means. And I wanted to have some people on who could speak to that. Also, with the Dear Mama documentary, and very related, right, because you have Malcolm X, who I believe, and as it is argued,
Malcolm is the most sampled revolutionary in the land of hip hop,
and inspired the Black Panthers. And we're also going to be talking about the Dear Mama documentary as well. We'll talk a little bit about that toward the end. But I remember I watched the first few episodes and just was astounded by how much I did not know about Tupac's mother and how that played into it. And I think that is also a great conversation to have on May 19th. So in celebration of Malcolm X's birthday, happy birthday, Malcolm X.
Happy birthday, Malcolm X.
Yeah.
98 X's and Malcolm is the
You know
X.
what I mean?
That's right. And just
Wally, Malcolm Shabazz.
Just a brief introduction of two of our guests. We have the literal hip hop ambassador to Newark, Hakim Green, who is an artist and rapper. He is an organizer of 24 Hours of Peace, which gets different hip hop artists locally, regionally, nationally to spend 24 hours, now really 36 hours, to promote peace in the city of Newark. And it is a thing of love and love of our community that leads him to do it. But that love of community you also see in his artistry. You see in the thing. And he's an independent hip hop artist who produces, writes, and continues to do that and put out new music. Because I think that there's a level in which there has to be a spirit of independence and a spirit of love and a spirit of community in hip hop. And Hakim Green embodies that as the ambassador to Newark and what he does. We have also a professor, a professor at North Shore Community College in Massachusetts, and longtime professor there actually, who also just is dedicated to students and has been dedicated to students for years. Troy Smith. He's also was teaching since I was in high school. I met him when I was in high school, and he was in college teaching Seton Hall Upward Bound, and someone who we originally had conversations about Malcolm X, hip hop. Like a lot of my earliest conversations with hip hop happened with Troy Smith and Todd Burrows on the campus of, ironically, Seton Hall University, where we just talked about, when I was a high school student in the Upward Bound program. So welcome back and congratulations on your new professorship as well. And glad to have you on as well. But today is May 19th, Malcolm X's birthday. We look at that and hip hop. Talk to me. Does someone want to get this conversation started?
Oh, man.
I already started by saying what I said about how extensively Malcolm has been sampled in hip hop. And it's one of the things that I used to do. And then a number of us did it in the streets of New York and the streets of Jersey. We would literally take Malcolm's speeches and give them to DJs on the street. All right. In the 80s and the early 90s. And that would come back in a number of ways far beyond what we intended. But it certainly had a boomerang effect throughout the land of hip hop that is still resonating. So that's I think that's one of the most basic places to start. I should say that we do as we usually do in New York City for Malcolm. We shut down 125th Street for the 34th consecutive year, what we call a commercial moment of silence with my comrades on the December 12th movement, and the 58th year of the annual caravan and pilgrimage to Malcolm's gravesite, conceptualized and originally organized by Malcolm's big sister, the late great Ella Little Collins. So we had a very full day, and as we speak, at the Shabazz Center, his daughter Ilyasa Shabazz is having her own annual tribute to her father on his birthday. And the Shabazz Center, of course, was the former Audubon Ballroom, where Malcolm organized and rallied the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and where he ultimately took his last breath on that fateful, still haunting day on February 21st, 1965.
Now, you said two things to elaborate on. You said Malcolm X is the most sampled person in hip hop?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. I did not know that.
Well, I remember as a young boy, WBLS on a Sunday playing Malcolm X speeches. I'm like,
you can remember that, Hakim?
Yeah. What are you talking about? Remember it clear as day.
The show was called Black Ethics and Expressions, and it was done by David Lampel. In 1977, I was coming out the throes of being a drug dealer, and I heard Malcolm's voice for the first time there on that show in December 1977, and I knew exactly what I had to do to change and save what was left of my crazy ass life.
I'm sorry.
So you heard him for the first time in 1977?
Yes.
No, that's not when you first heard him.
I'm older than all y'all. But
that's the first time you heard was in 1977?
Huh?
That's not the first time you heard Malcolm was in 1977.
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What's the story you tell Zaid about the book? Did you say I
stole the autobiography of the drug transaction just several days before that?
Wow.
What?
Oh yeah.
Wait, stop.
Oh, y'all know that story?
No.
You got me messed up right now.
All right, so wait.
I'm an ex-everything.
I was in
1977.
December 1977. I was out of my African mind and in deep trouble. About to get killed or locked up for all that madness I was into in the streets.
That's deep.
And some said, and the customer's name is Iris Cunningham. That's her name, right? In her living room, like, what is she doing with this? Now she's a stone knucklehead out of Weekway High School. What are you doing with this here book? I know you ain't reading it. She said, you got my stuff. I said, you got my money? She went to go get my money. I stole that damn book and Couple days later, I heard that Black Ethics and Expression, and I knew I had to really straighten my life out because I was really coming under fire from the police.
And Zay, when you picked up the book, how long
shooting at me on the streets? It was a trip.
When you picked up the book, how long did it take you to read it?
Oh, a day or two.
A day or two. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I was just in, it was a new fire that had been ignited under me, and that's the way the ancestors get hold of you sometimes.
Yeah, but I just say, like, that story in and of itself shows you the power of broadcast communications and the responsibility to send out certain messages. And the powers that be understand the power of a voice like Malcolm and having the effect that he had on Baba Zaid, helping him to turn his life around like that, just by hearing his voice and hearing the message coming across that vibration. That's powerful and not to be slept on, especially as we talk about Malcolm's influence and impact on hip hop culture. Yeah, so the Chuck D's, the Public Enemies, the KRS Ones, of course, the X Clans, all those groups in the late 80s.
Yeah, that comes 10 to 15 years later.
Yeah, like there's a gap in the consciousness in terms of what was happening in the 60s, early 70s, and you get to late 70s, 80s. It was party time. It was crack era. It was, of course, the AIDS era. It was greed is good. It was exploitation. At its highest. And then the voice that Chuck D voice was so reminiscent of Malcolm.
Yes.
So, and then Chris gave you the by all means necessary at the window joint with the reminiscent of that whole thing. So Malcolm's influence on our consciousness, just the way we were moving, organization. Malcolm was so much about organizing. We know him from the speeches behind the scenes. He was doing so much real work in the community, through drug addiction and just the police brutality, just organizing people, making that connection from the centers of power to the lowest man on the street, and hip hop has that same ability, but we've lost our way, unfortunately.
I just want to say, just to piggyback on some of the conversation about what was happening in the 70s, for me, I have memories of when my family lived on South 12th Street in Newark, and my mom, Christian background, we were probably wearing dashikis, and we went to a film, and I'm talking about a real film in terms of the reels, and folks were showing a film on Malcolm, and there was just at that early time, when I was maybe about 6 years old or something, I just have that memory of folks, we were there in some basement, I don't even know where, but I'll never forget my exposure, to Malcolm at that time. So it was always
Can you remember the film?
I was about 6 years old.
It was probably the Warner Brothers documentary By Any Means Necessary that was done in 72.
Okay.
It was very little done until Gil Noble started getting busy a little later on after that.
Okay.
That was a very good documentary too.
Yeah. I remember it being in the early 70s, but I just remember the impact on myself. Maybe not realizing it at the time, but Malcolm was just always a presence with me. And, he was with me, moving forward through my experiences with debate, because Malcolm had such a great impact with the prison debate team here in good old Boston. That was a major experience just with Malcolm and the prison debate team. That was inspiring. They used to have folks from MIT and Harvard who would go to the prison in Boston, or to the jail in Boston. I'm not sure if it was Norfolk, but they would have prison debates, and that was one of the things that Shorty, talked about in the Make It Plain documentary, where he said folks would come from the jail, just to see Malcolm debate. So there's a great intersection there. with Malcolm and debate. And I know at Science High we used to have our oratory class that our great friend Mr. Ferran had, and I can remember myself doing the Dr. King speech and Mitchell Douglas doing the Malcolm. When we had like the speeches memorized and delivered them. So I'll just say Martin and Malcolm has been sort of a major pair for me, and I developed 3 different Martin and Malcolm classes at 3 colleges, in Massachusetts, here at North Shore, and actually ended up doing a UMass Martin and Malcolm class that had been like pushed aside for years. No one had taught it for a while until I started doing it in the early 90s, and I taught it then. I just took the idea with me to 2 other schools. So this whole issue around Black studies, today and with hip hop is really important. And I had developed a course called I Am Hip Hop that maybe I can mention a little later on. Peace to Blastmaster KRS-One for that in terms of that title. But we emphasize, I'll tell you the subtitle because it's a very interesting subtitle with the course as well. But, so those are just some memories I wanted to share there.
Nice. Having said that, there's things that I want us to build on going forward into next year. Malcolm's most legendary debate, and he debated at Harvard 3 times once he came out of prison as an organizer in the nation, and after he left the nation, he did three at Harvard after that, and claimed his old role as an old burglar in that, neighborhood when he did it. Next year is the 50th anniversary. I'm sorry, the 60th anniversary of his legendary debate at Oxford.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And Ilyasa, his daughter Ilyasa, is very strong on education. One of the things that brought us to the Shabazz Center many years ago, and I say us, I'm talking about my work with the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee in New York City, is that we had an essay contest around the autobiography in some of the schools. But I always wanted to do something with debate. And then Troy, you in Massachusetts, right? Jonathan, you've been doing your thing and just got acknowledged in the land of debate. I would love to really work something out where we actually figured out how to host some debates to mark that anniversary at the very Shabazz Center itself. That's something I'm going to be very intentional about trying to bring together. So I really want y'all to stay tuned. She has just developed an education curriculum that she wants to push out. And this is, so she's in a receptive space to try to really do this. And that, Malcolm at Oxford was like, that sent shockwaves all around the world. And in particular, this is the time also, 1964, it's the height of what was then the non-aligned movement, the Southern Hemisphere in an uproar, breaking the chains of colonialism and imperialism, and with socialism very much on the rise. London was a hugely international town, and the young people from all over the Southern Hemisphere who were in London were on fire behind Malcolm. London is one of those cities where he's really not appreciated for his impact, but wherever those major cities that he roamed, he set those towns on fire, and it was an international. It reverberated around the world, and it's one of the reasons why he's not here either. It was that serious and that intense.
And it's interesting because the topic for that was the topic from Malcolm X's 1964 Oxford debate was extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And Troy, we've debated that multiple times, like in multiple areas where they don't really talk about, that debate. It's just presented as a debate, right? So I think that's really interesting. So, but we want to make sure that we talk about him in the context of music, in the context of hip hop. And I know that DJ Rhino, you were here. I'm gonna just give it to you because I know that you have some things to say on this as well. And some questions to ask. I know you got questions for everybody.
Well, first off, my first introduction to Malcolm X was when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. I was living out in Stony Brook, Long Island. I was going to it's like a nursery school, kindergarten, whatever. It was called Malcolm King. That was the name of the school. It was named after Malcolm and named after Martin. It was called Malcolm King. And they used to have a big, huge poster of Malcolm X in the lobby area. And I used to hear his speeches then. That's where I first was introduced to, like, just, you know, hearing his name and seeing his face and stuff like that. But then coming up in hip hop, because just like what Haqq said, there was a gap in the consciousness, right, from, you know, a certain part in the 70s and throughout the 80s. You know, there was a gap in the consciousness. But then Public Enemy comes out with a song called "Bring the Noise," and this is a song that's gone global. It's like the song they did a song with, they remixed the song with Anthrax and all that, but they put out a song called "Bring the Noise." The very beginning of the song, it's an edit where it's Malcolm saying "too black,
too strong."
Yes, sir. And then he repeated again. It says "too black, too strong," and then the beat drops. And when you go back and you look, and I'm a digger. You know what I'm saying? We always digging. You know, DJs, producers, we dig in hip hop. That's what we do. We go through the crates, right? And you find the speech where he's talking about, he's speaking on the subject of integration, and he's talking about when you have a cup of black coffee, and you put the cream in the coffee,
integrated with cream.
Yeah, and you weaken it. You know, you weaken it. It's not strong. We said when you have a cup of coffee that's too black, that is too strong, and that's where they sampled it. And then he went on to talk about how you dilute it with cream, and it gets weaker as you pour more cream or milk into the black coffee. You know what I'm saying? And just things like that. Like, that's hip hop. You know what I'm saying? For me, to hear that sample on their record, and that record was so huge and it's such a banger. You know what I mean? And then to find the actual speech where they got that from, and then to listen to the speech, learn about this man and what his perspectives are. You know what I'm saying? That's hip hop. You know what I mean? And that's what it means to me. And that's how I got introduced to Malcolm.
It comes from the message to the grassroots.
Just to add on what Rhino was saying. So, you know, I came up East Orange, New Jersey. My mother was a registered member of Mosque number 25 in 1972, 3, 4. All right. So I got early memories of going to the mosque early. And then afterward, I'm a little boy, 3 years old, 4 years old. I'm hearing the conversation still about Malcolm, Elijah, you know, the nation, the split. You know, I don't really know who's who, what's what. It's just these are like legends to me at this point. And then you hear Malcolm in 77 on BLS, and it's that man. I'm putting the voice to the face, right? Okay, it's that man. Okay. But again, there's this gap, right? When in 1986, 87, my mind state, like Baba Zaid described where he was in 77, I wasn't there, but my mindset wasn't what it is since.
Yeah.
Right. And what happened was some older brothers of ours, when I was a freshman in college at Wagner, just noticed some things and said, hey, brother, you need to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which was in my mother's library. Just never picked it up to read it. I read it the summer of 1988, and it changed my life. That was it.
Same here, bro. Same here.
That was it. It was like Malcolm.
That was the book, man. That was the intro, man. That was it right there.
Yeah.
And
then, to both of your points, too black, too strong comes from the message of the grassroots. And November 10th marks the 60th anniversary of that speech. That is Malcolm's most seminal speech, right? The most influential out of all of his major speeches. You just had the Ballad of the Bullet in your hand. Winley also did the message to the grassroots that way. I had all of those. All of that stuff is gone now, and I go crazy every time I think about that. I don't have those records anymore. But you know, Malcolm just has a way of just breaking through time barriers and darkness and confusion and doubt and all of that, and just like you know, as we say, wake up, clean up, and stand up.
Yes.
We always
Can I just say,
so many.
And I just want to say, you know, we're talking about the book, you know, in reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, the most interesting part for me personally about his story is the transition. You know what I'm saying? When he's going from being the street hustler, the dude up in Harlem, you know what I'm saying, Detroit Red, you know, and then getting, you know, being incarcerated and going through those challenges, and then getting the message while he's incarcerated, and then coming out and meeting the messenger. And just that part right there is the part that I feel so many black men need to hear, to you know what I'm saying? They need to understand that part, man, because we can all change.
A lifeline for black men.
We can all change and get better.
For that very thing you're talking about. Yes, sir.
Yes. And you know, the part that I think is so significant, and I think a lot of people miss this today, is how much Malcolm had such piercing insight on internalized self-hatred. You know, so when he talks about getting his hair conked, and when he had to run and you know, put it in the toilet to try to, you know, at least in the film. Wait a second now, but you know, in terms of just trying to get that out, you know, and what that symbolizes, and you think about all the changes that folks go through, hair and good hair and all that stuff. And see, that was some of the stuff that we used to talk about in Upward Bound, you know, during those, you know, years in the, you know, mid 80s. We had like our D group program. So, I mean, we had a lot of activists in Upward Bound. You know, we don't always talk about that, but we had folks like Mr. John Curtis, other folks who were just, you know, really deep. Mr. Smith, you know, where we would talk about, you know, those types of issues, and you know, the whole stuff around internalization. And also, I hope we get a chance to talk about the international dimension as well, because when we look at some of the things that's happening in the quote unquote third world, and how we have third world structures in our own society, you know, what is it that's keeping us from being able to come together from a Pan-African perspective? You know, we got to talk about that international consciousness, because that was a major part of what he was talking about.
I remember, ironically, right? Like, I remember that when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and the person who told me to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I had just graduated from high school, getting ready to go to college, and Todd Burrows said, before you go to college, read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And it was early in the summer. He was like, you should do it, because you're going to be in a different environment, right? And there's a sense of knowing, like all of the politics around it, that you'll find helpful when you get to college. And Todd was a year older than me, and so he was already in college for a year. And so I was like, let me read it. And when I read it, I was like, wow, right? Like the piercing insight, the ways to read, the compelling nature of his analysis of society, just opened eyes, right? Like after that, I remember reading everything else that he wrote, right? Going to Source of Knowledge, and that summer, just picking up that all of the different collections of speeches, and just reading all of them into the beginning of my freshman year, and I thought it was like an essential rites of passage grounding, right? In terms of just being able to understand and analyze the craziness, the insanity that is white supremacy. Because unless you have a grounding in what it is, you're going to think you're crazy for a second, right? You're going to think you don't know. You're going to think you're out of your mind when these structures are crazy, these attitudes are crazy. Like the things that people take for granted and the way they live their normal lives that assume white supremacy is real is like crazy, right? And so unless you're grounded in that, then, you know, I think that becomes important. And so when I heard Public Enemy for the first time, like I think it was maybe that December, I'd come home from school and listen to the radio, and on the radio was that song, and I was like, wow, who is this? what, like, and it was everything, right? Like, so in terms of Malcolm X's influence on hip hop, I think that, you know, Malcolm X is a rite of passage for young black men, or should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that all of us had our own individual rites of passage moments around 16, 17, 18 years old that kind of, you know, was like Malcolm, and understanding like the nature of the fight that we were going to be in simply because of who we were.
Right. We can shout out Todd real quick. Think about this.
Hold on a second, Rhino. You got to shout out Todd's lie of reinvention, correcting Manning Marabelle's Malcolm X. What Todd and Jared Bell did, same as Herb Boy did with Malcolm X, Real Not Invented, was a hugely important contribution in defense of Malcolm's legacy when it came under attack by somebody who should have lifted it up.
Right, and that's so yeah, definitely. Shout out to Dr. Todd Burrows and honor. It's so funny because I kept going over just what an honor my life is growing up, knowing so many people who would do so many things, right? And my childhood friend being Dr. Todd Burrows, who first told me to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and himself wrote an important book on Malcolm X with esteemed Professor Dr. Jared Ball.
Go ahead, Rhino. We both.
No, I was just saying that basically Malcolm X influenced the most important hip hop group in hip hop, the most important rap group in hip hop.
I mean, I'm gonna take it further, Rhino. Malcolm X influenced hip hop. Like the spirit of Malcolm is all through hip hop culture. Even when you just look at, you know, the last poets and you know how important they are to the culture. And
their anniversary is today also.
Oh wow. And rest in peace,
1968, Garvey Park, Harlem. The last poets launched themselves.
The Panthers
all been on fire since.
Right. You know, and he influenced the Panthers. Like that's, you know, just that spirit of resistance, spirit of rebellion, you know, knowledge of self, respect for yourself as a black man and woman.
Right.
Like that's all Malcolm. That's like he was the standard by which we wanted to kind of put our lives by. Of course, no, you know, we fall way too short. But just the example of standing on principle and standing on truth, and you know, having a truth, and you know, by all means, voicing that truth, like putting your life on the line for it. You know, when you could easily shut up and go away, you could easily take the check, you could easily turn your back on your people, easy. But no, I'm here for a purpose and sticking to it. Like he's the example. Like I said, we fall so short. But Malcolm, for hip hop culture, the generation I came up with, that was the standard.
Yeah.
And it almost is like hip hop culture had to try to, or at least the popular music industry had to like find a different source, right? Like I just remember the difference between Public Enemy when they came out, and even though I like some of the songs that NWA did, very, very different roots, right? Like most of the hip hop before that, right? A lot of the hip hop could be traced directly back to Malcolm X. Even when KRS did Criminal Minded, which ostensibly was a gangster album, right? He had the picture that superimposed Malcolm X on that, right? Like, as
you talking about, but that was by any means necessary.
That was by any means necessary.
Okay,
Well, just so
Scott LaRock,
right? Okay,
Scott LaRock, and they had the
right. Guns on the track. So, but let me just give you a little backstory with Chris, right? With Chris and Scott LaRock. So, Chris, knowledge reigns supreme. Krishna, he got his name because he used to hang around with the Hottie Fishers. Just New York City was a hotbed of culture, knowledge exchange. So these different groups that exist where if you're open enough, they're right there. You can build with them, get information, get knowledge, get other ways of thinking. Chris being homeless, spending so much time in New York Public Library, he just had a different consciousness than a lot of other people in the street. When it came time to record music, Scott was like, you basically got to dumb it down. We got to have you appeal, or we need to appeal to a certain element where all that knowledge you cooking, that ain't going to translate. So Criminal Minded was really Chris going, all right, Scott, I'm gonna give you what you want, right? Then the whole thing happens with Scott and being murdered and that whole thing. Chris was like, I gotta be this thing now. And he's been that thing ever since, which is who he originally was. Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone. He can give you gangster street stuff, but Chris is, out of the spirit of Malcolm X, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like the difference between the two album covers is real, right? Like in that. And I think that is like one with a bunch of guns on it and the other still with the gun, but a very different context, right? Very different context in terms of recreating that famous Malcolm X picture, but with him in like a new generation. And so, and actually just more on that, because KRS-One well, right? Like we call you the ambassador to hip hop for a reason, right? You work with KRS-One, you're friends, and you've known him for years, right? Like for many, many, many years.
Too many minis on that mini, but go ahead.
So what is when he talks about that? When he talks about those early times with Scott LaRock afterwards and that influence in terms of Malcolm, what are some of the things he says? Because you're saying that even before that, the Criminal Minded was just trying to, make that money, not be homeless. So talk to me more about that, and especially in light of what he believed, this education, the spirit of Malcolm.
Yeah. So, being in New York City, Chris was born in 65, actually. I think he was born the year Malcolm was murdered. 65. Wow. So coming up, him and Kenny, and actually Kenny has a very good book everybody should go get. It's called My Brother's Name is Kenny. It's the story of Kenny Parker and KRS-One. It's their life through Kenny's eyes. But in that, New York City being this hotbed of culture, the exchange of culture, Malcolm being a resident of Harlem, his impact and effect on their mother was very great. There was a steady exchange of knowledge and culture in their house early on, before Chris and things happened and he became homeless, that stayed with him when he was homeless. He had a very rebellious spirit, very free-spirited. Kenny likes to say, Chris is the guy you see on the corner and you cross the street, like you want to get away from that guy. He was just kind of out his mind. His name, well, I can tell you, spill all the beans, but he was out his mind. But much like Malcolm, being that street person, being out on his own, since his mom had died at a very early age, he went to go live with his sister for some time and bounced back and forth between Boston and some with Midwest somewhere, but not really having structure. It's the same thing. Scott stepping into KRS-One's life as a social worker while KRS is homeless, living in the shelter, understanding, organization, the record industry, your talent. Let's put this down, but you got to do it this way. And then, much like Malcolm in the nation, you got to do it this way, but there's a greater truth that you're about, and standing on that greater truth. So even after the unfortunate loss of Scott LaRock, you see kind of Chris take a position that was based on a truth, not the commercial truth, not the, the fantasy, not the, the narrative that we like to create around things, but the actual fact of the matter is this, and I'm willing to risk it all. That's much like Malcolm, to literally, unfortunately, put his life on the line, standing on the truth that he stood on. So, I see a lot of the sameness between Chris and Malcolm in that way. And of course, the voice, being able to articulate the reality of our existence, be it through a hip hop lens or through a much higher lens, is bigger than hip hop. Big shout out to Dead Prez. You can see Malcolm's spirit all over Chris, Chuck. There are certain folks out there that just have that. They speak, you listen. You might not agree. You could be coming from a different, but the command of the spoken word is like Malcolm was genius with it, being able to make it plain, take concepts, and that's another thing. So when we first got with Chris, the Tuffy and I were like super duper lyrical miracle, a whole bunch of syllables. Nah, you got to dumb it down. You got to bring it down and talk in a way where the person on the bottom can understand you. That's my lesson from KRS-One. That was Malcolm. Malcolm could make it plain. Take concepts that are up here that you could talk in front of an audience at Harvard or Oxford, and he could stand in front of the person on the corner with that same message, but in a way where that person could get it. Yeah. So yeah.
That's right. That is so right. So right.
And so I wanted to. I know that we are coming. We are getting up to the end of the show. We have about 13 more minutes left. I wanted to segue into the Dear Mama documentary, not to talk about the whole thing right now, because there's not enough time to unpack it, and I do want to have an entire show just talking about that. But I think we'd be remiss to talk about hip hop and Malcolm X and not talk about Tupac, and not bring up at least the concept of the documentary and those first 1 or 2 episodes. I watched the first 4 episodes of the documentary, and I thought the first 2 were amazing because I found out stuff that I actually did not know. Right, I did not know about his mother to the extent to which she was persecuted and hounded, and had to exhort a defense of her own life. I did not really even understand this because we know about the Great Panther trial that took place in Chicago. We really don't talk about the Panther trial that took place in New York.
And we really 21 case.
Right, the Panther 21 case. And we don't even talk about, right, again, the COINTELPRO, what it is, how important it was in destroying movements. And even the aim of COINTELPRO often wasn't to convict the Panthers and the people that they persecuted. The goal was just to make them lose money, to make them lose time, to make them lose their sanity and the persecution and getting, because when you're on trial, that is stressful in and of itself. That is like something that you have to deal with in and of itself, right? When you're being tried for something. And that I think, in terms of what COINTELPRO did, what the federal government and police did to his mother, I thought was astounding. So I wanted to talk just briefly in light of Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, Tupac, and what was that influence that was there, specifically in the context of the documentary.
Well, who wants
you actually haven't seen the documentary yet.
Okay,
I was about to say the same. I saw the very first episode, and that was it. I just saw the first episode.
And and again, we're not talking about the whole thing, just the concept. And really, the first episode really becomes like, to me, the first episode. Maybe we'll go and watch all the others, right? Because that first episode was so compelling, and there was so much I did not know. So, just if you've seen a little bit of it, you can.
I've seen them all. I've seen them all, and I know a bunch of folks that are intimately involved in Pac's life. I just did a fundraiser for Mutulu Shakur, his stepfather, right? I mean, there's a lot of places to go, and we definitely have to come back to this conversation when we do have more time. Pac's birthday is the 16th of June, right? He was born while his mother was fighting for her life. Yeah, that's part of that legacy. You always hear me say when we used to be in the studio, especially when we talk about Pac, what do I always say? Pac is the most
baby of the
Black Panther Party, and he was indeed that. And that's his mother. Billy Garland is from Plainfield, New Jersey.
Well, and I was gonna say, Zaid, when you said that Tupac was the baby of the Black Panther Party, I didn't know you meant it literally.
Oh, yes, I did.
She was on trial in the Panther 21 when she was pregnant with him.
Yeah.
she gave birth to him while she was in prison.
Baptized.
Like that was just powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is his father. The father. Billy Garland was remote, very remote in Tupac's life, unfortunately, right? But he's from Plainfield, right, my hometown, right? Some years later, I would have Billy Garland's nephew in my gym, and he was one of our best fighters. Kid named Adam Garland. We didn't know those connections back then, right? But Adam wound up being one of our best fighters, and we had one of the top gyms in the world. In the 80s, late 70s, and the early 80s, going into the 90s. Adam was a hell of a fighter, right? Related to Tupac Shakur in ways that we were late. We really just started putting that together just in recent years. But Mutulu Shakur,
right, his stepfather,
needs to be. So I'm going to try and get Jamal Joseph, who's a very dear comrade, who was one of the executive producers of that documentary, and he's all through that because him and Afeni were very close in the party. And Brother Watani, who was his manager at one point, who's a legend in the new African independence movement, right? Up until Pac made that fateful decision to go with Suge Knight, right? Not only did Watani was his manager, but Watani knew how to protect people for real, and he protected Pac as much as he could, to the degree that Pac would allow himself to be protected, right? There are some painful and deadly parallels in Tupac's life and death as there are in the life and death of one Malcolm Latif Shabazz, the grandson of Malcolm X, the anniversary who we've lost just a few weeks ago. Also, they made some very risky moves and put themselves out of the circles of protection that we were trying to put around them, and we lost them both in that way, unfortunately. So there's a whole lot. There are a lot of places to go. Mutulu was going into prison when I started doing political prisoner work in the 1980s.
Wow.
And so Zaid, Tupac's family was not supportive of his of him choosing to be represented by Suge Knight.
No, there was a disagreement. They were always supportive of him, but there was a disagreement because Suge had some, Suge, right, and of course that would later play out into a lot of things, including what happened on that fateful night back in September of '96. Suge.
And it's interesting because
everybody was supportive of him. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
I was going to say that dichotomy between Suge Knight and the influence of the Panthers could be. I mean, that was the divide within hip hop, right? Like you had the influence of Malcolm X on one side, and you had the capitalism, make money, drug dealing, right? Like that level of
low
gangsterism, gangsterism,
right? That level of gangsterism on the other, right?
Gangsterism. Like that's the painful part for me is life is about choices, and watching Pac holler when you hear me, Brenda's got a baby, like that Pac right there. I was so into Pac, and one of my co-workers at the time, Miss Sepalak, what is with this Tupac character? I don't get it. I don't understand Hakim. Something about him I don't like. No, you don't understand. He's from the struggle. He's a baby Panther. I'm telling you, he's about the right stuff. He's about the this, that, and the third. And then, you see things unfold. And it's just like, his power. Oh my God, Tupac's power. Oh, his power was crazy. His power was, he's spirit's powerful.
But what's crazy when you talk about Tupac's power, it reminds me of Malcolm's power. Remember in the movie where Malcolm did the whole thing where he just turned and pointed, and everybody followed. Like Pac had that kind of power because the way people were following Pac during those last couple years of his life, man, it was crazy. Pac had mad followers, man. You know what I mean? If he was here today in the social media you talk about followers. Pop would be a leader, right? Like,
and it's funny because of the line and that scene in Malcolm X, when Malcolm X did that, and how Spike Lee put the next scene where the cop said that is too much power for one man to have, and for him to say that, because we all know what they were thinking, you know, and it was purposeful for him to put that line in there.
Yeah, it's real. That was real stuff. That was real. That's one part of the film Spike got right.
And it's
we also stepped to Spike when he started, talking about making that film. This is Malcolm. You better come correct. Are we coming for you? We physically went to go see his ass.
Now, what was the main objection? Because I know Mary Baraka went after Spike Lee and making it. I know that there were a lot of other objections. What were the main objections to Spike Lee? Because everybody loves the movie.
I know was it Dr. Pritchett who just said that zoot suit? He was like, somebody was just pissed off about the zoot suit part. He was like, that was just unnecessary. I think that was Dr. Pritchett who might have said that last week or a couple weeks ago.
Just going back, the basic concern is that there was real questions about Spike having the maturity socially and politically to tackle something as big as Malcolm with integrity. It's just really that simple, right? As we approached him, someone from the in an underground way shot us the script that they were playing with, and it was horrible. So even after we had put him on blast that we were going to hold him accountable, we had to continue to hold him accountable. And that's when what he did, he went and made that extra push from some extra money from 5 folks who were like the Magic Johnsons and the Oprahs of the land and whatnot. He said, you got to clean this up. This is his language, and get this right. And what he did is that he fell back on the original piece of work that it was supposed to come from. And that was the late, great James Baldwin, One Day When I Was Lost. Right? And so a lot of what you see in the end comes from Spike rightfully coming to terms with where he should have started in the first place. Right?
By the way,
and actually it was her boy. But how did the family at the end of everything? How did the daughters feel about the movie?
Well, Ilyasa is actually at Spike at the Shabbat Center tonight. November was the 30th anniversary of the film, and I had suggested that we do something in November, to unpack that from a community-based perspective. Ilyasa has a little bit part somewhere. I can't even find it. She's got a little background piece in that, and she was a kid back then. The mothers, Betty stayed very close to it and was absolutely, understood why we stepped to him. And she said, yeah, that boy better get it right. I'm not putting my name to something that's not right, So it became a community influence project, in the end. And when he tried to get internationally, of course, he had Nelson Mandela at the end, quote Malcolm, it's his famous by any means necessary quote. But, we had to put some pressure on Lil Smooth, right? But, the family understood that. And it helped that play out into us getting something decent, that is now going into has got new legs, and it has its pluses. Now, of course, it did not capture Malcolm's revolutionary legacy, right? His revolutionary politics, what Troy was alluding to, his internationalism and his Pan-Africanism. It didn't get that, right? And that's stuff that still has to be done. Still has to be done even more so in scholarship. Right, but Sister Dr. Betty certainly understood that and wanted that process to play out the way it rightfully should have played out.
If I could, I'll mention this one piece to bring Boston into it. I remember back in the 90s when the brother, the late Malcolm Jarvis, the one that they called Shorty, he was on a radio station. And I'll never forget this because he was saying, Spike didn't come to talk to me. He didn't consult with me. He says, I'm, a tall man myself. And the reason they called him Shorty was just making fun of him being tall. So he said, Spike Lee is playing me. He says, I'm a tall, dark-skinned man, and Spike is playing my part. So, I found that very interesting just hearing
wow, that's crazy.
Malcolm Jarvis giving his perspective.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I never knew that Shorty's actually tall.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I didn't know that either.
I used to call Charles Barkley Shorty.
But I was going to say we are coming to the end of this segment. But it is because we are it's approaching after 9, and to wrap this up in terms of just some last words. First, thank all of you for coming on. Right, I think we need to do more of it. Like DJ Rhino, we talked before about having to do more longer segments on discussions about hip hop, and I think that this is one of those things that we will do more often in terms of just focusing on it. And I could think of no better day than May 19th. So, Rhino, you can close us out.
No, I was gonna just mention, like, I did a set earlier today. It wasn't even really a set. I went online and basically played a bunch of Malcolm speeches, most of which was the Ballad of the Bullet, but there were some other speeches in there too.
Speeches to music, right?
Nah, I was just playing it raw. Raw Malcolm all day.
Get to all about him.
Yeah, it was about 3 hours worth. You know what I mean? But again, what I do every Saturday. Tomorrow I'm going to be on twitch.tv/RhinoCMZ at 3 p.m. for the shake up. It's going to be all vinyl. I've been doing all vinyl for the past few weeks, so I'm sticking with all vinyl. You see behind me, I'm going to be doing that tomorrow at 3 p.m. on Twitch.
Yeah. Can I do one shout out, Jonathan?
Absolutely.
Well, one, Hakim, you got to the Raz that you grew up with have Malcolm X birthdays. Tyari and Rodney Jackson.
Right, Rodney Jackson.
Right?
Yeah.
And Boston, we got to come back and deal with UMass Boston because 2 of my elders are under attack at UMass Boston, Africana Studies. My Baba Lau Tony Vandermeer and Baba Jamadari Kamara, they're under attack at UMass Boston. So this whole thing about the attack on Black studies is an American thing, not a Southern thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Rhino, did you tell us anything about the shirt? You told us already?
Oh, today is the anniversary of the Roots' debut album, Organics, back in 1992.
Wow, on May 19th.
Yeah,
Wow.
1993, May 19th.
Okay.
Organics drop is the first time we ever heard of the Roots, man. So
Okay.
big ups to the Roots.
Anything else to add, Donna, before we leave?
No. I got a whole new subject, but I'll wait till next show.
All right, cool. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I like that. All right. On that note, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your week. See you next week.
Thank you for the opportunity to come on.
No, thank you for being on. Thank you,
everybody. Have a great weekend.
We didn't get to get. You gotta tell us your music.
Oh, you meant Troy Smith. Your music.
Okay, sure. So I would say the song, and I remember walking on Main Street or Central Avenue, East Orange, coming out of Bates College, 1988, walking down the street. I remember when Rebel Without a Pause came on. That was instrumental.
Yep.
And I'll also throw in Rebel Diaz, Dead Prez, Which Side Are You On? That's a bad song. And I know from my I Am Hip Hop class, my partner who developed the class with me, we did a workshop on that, looking at the history of the song, because Which Side Are You On is an old Union song. And
Which side are you on?
Yeah, we do a historical evolution of how the song developed. So that's
nice.
Some good stuff. So I love that song, Rebel Diaz. Which Side Are You On?
So we're gonna have to have you back when we're talking about this. You've done an entire course on hip hop. We got to have you back more often. As I said a long time ago, or as I said this in the last year, I'm honored to know so many people I know growing up who did so many cool things. That as I am older, so I've been very blessed. All right, we'll see everyone next week. All politics are local. Tune in next week when we have the mayor's forum and a lot of other great guests.